To dance them just like I tell you. And when I say hold yourself, I want all of you get ready to stop. When I say stop, don't move. And when I say get it, I want all of y'all to go boogie woogie. Hold it now. Boogie woogie.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Discover RPG, where we chat about D&D and RPG and other fun stuff, and sometimes stay on task. I am Angela, and this is Logan, and we have a very super duper special guest today with us. We have Mr. Scratticus with us. How are you doing today?
Hi. Oh, you know, I'm about.
He did not go to Scratticus Academy to be called Mister. I think it's Dr.
Sorry, Dr. Scratticus.
No, I'm about that far into my first coffee. I'm great. I'm just
I finished mine in like 2 seconds, but that's because I'm on 2.5 hours of sleep. So, but that's great.
Oh, okay. So I'm doing doubly better than you are. I managed to get 5
nice,
in.
good job.
Yeah.
That's
almost valid amount.
I was gonna say for you and I who DM as much as we do and we play as much as we do, that's actually pretty.
Yeah.
Let's see, who do we have here? Secondhand Samurai. Hi.
I see.
Matthias Belger. I don't recognize that name. So hello.
Matthias, did you come with me and T-Girl? Oh,
there
hi,
you
you
go.
guys. Welcome. I know Matthias through Off the Table, if you guys know Off the Table.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
very cool. Yes, absolutely.
Off the
Thank
Table,
you guys
one
for
of
being
I
here.
think the most underrated channels on the Twitches. I think.
On the Twitches. What is it again?
Off the Table, they are all about the dramas, all about the dramas and the smooches, and I love it.
We have a lot of dramas and the smooches as well on our channel.
Oh, but I mean, they
if
are.
My players aren't crying once a week. I don't think I'm doing my job.
Oh yeah, no. I just mean they are like all about it. Like, I mean,
Okay,
all of them. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do a lot of smooches and stuff, but not as much as that.
Understood. So it's a Dream Daddy
Is
RPG.
it off
I gotcha.
underscore the table.
That's the ones. Yeah, with the otters. The otters. Hey, Prax, good morning. Yeah, Complex Love Polyhedrals. That's from the Off the Table campaign I was in. We didn't have love triangles in that game. We had Complex Love Polyhedrals.
We have 2
Welcome.
or 3.
We have an
Parties,
OT
cameras.
party at this point for some people.
We just, it's like everybody, we have 16 people in our West Marches style campaign, and it is pretty much just an OT 16 at this point. It's just ridiculous. There might be like an OT 8, an OT 12.
It's different configurations, yeah.
And it rotates. And now there's NPCs getting involved, so.
Though it doesn't matter what the number is, the end game of this campaign is we will all end up in a commune at some point and just be living all
In real
together.
life, when we're talking about, so, there's that.
That's because isn't that the end game IRL? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Fair.
It
where
really
I'm
is. We've started
going.
making a property. I think it's ridiculous, but we have.
Like legitimately, somebody was going, okay, this one's not bad. Look at this. They start sending us URLs. I'm like, oh gosh,
It is
There's-
an
it's
amazing thought. Of course, I think a lot of gamers have that dream of like owning the property and going to castlemagic.com and buying the castle or whatever, putting it on your property and having a bunch of people live there. Or for me, it was buying a cul-de-sac and just having everyone live in the same cul-de-sac so we could frickin' play D&D all the time, because I didn't like to play online very much, but I do now.
look at you now.
Yeah, look what happened.
But at the time, back then, when internet speeds were slow and just it was all choppy, it was really hard. But I think that's the dream for a lot of people. But when you finally find your tribe and you're like, wow, I actually could do that with this group. I actually see myself possibly living near these people and actually enjoying it for the rest of my life. That's a fun experience.
Aww.
Yeah.
And then there's Angela too, of course.
I'm all right. I'm all right.
The only person in my life I've ever thought that I might move out of state to be near.
Yeah.
Florida.
But no, you don't have to live in Florida.
No gators and heat. No thanks.
Yeah. I mean, if you want a castle, if you want a castle, just come over to England. We've got castles coming out of, we're up to here with castles. There's castles everywhere. You can hardly walk down the street without bumping into another castle.
I hear you actually have them over there. It's like
The castle is the British version of the colonial. They're just everywhere. There's suburbs of castles.
Yeah, warring tribes. It used to all sorts. It's can't get anywhere without somebody with a bloody castle.
some freaking castle. Throwing castles at me. Let's before we get too much into our playful banter, because I just see we could just.
Oh yeah, this is gonna happen.
Let's why don't we go through our
So
little thing here? So we've got today we've got some awesome topics, including some brought to us by Scratticus, and I didn't do a mic check, so please let us know if somebody's voice is louder than the others.
This session plan is hypothetical. It's aspirational. Yes. We might get to it. We'll see.
Let's see. I don't even have it up.
Do you want me to go over it? I have the list here.
Oh, if you have it up, oh yeah, go ahead. Go.
I do. All right, so after our delightful, playful banter, which we will return to in a moment, the sweetest thing is going to be us talking about your best moment in gaming. I assume that means DMing or playing, just in general.
This was me at 2:30 going, all of these topics are pretty in-depth. I want to start with something a little more fun, and I couldn't come up with anything. So somebody was talking, I found this thing talking about people's worst experiences in D&D, and I'm like, Scratticus and I are two positive people. We don't want to talk about our worst experience. We want to talk about our best experience. So let's talk about the moment that we went, wow, this is what D&D is about, or at least one of the more recent ones, because I'm sure that we've had hundreds each.
I propose a DM moment and a player moment. Those are my proposals.
Okay.
Those can be very different structure.
I will try to come up with them again too. I came up with the question. I have no answer in mind yet. Well, you know what? I'll just make something up. I'm good at that.
Sure. So the next
notes for this?
I'll be taking notes at some point. But then the next we have the bandwagon. This one is something that Logan and I want to turn into a short instructional video at some point because there's a lot to dig in on this subject.
Should we talk about why I'm up at 7 a.m. and only have 2.5 hours of sleep?
I guess. Why?
That's Scratticus' fault.
Oh, I said that already.
Sorry.
He's busy at our normal time, so we're doing this special episode early because we didn't want to just do a little short recorded interview. We wanted to have him on a whole episode, so we're like, no, we gotta have him. So so here we are. We're here at 7 a.m. We're gonna go ahead and rerun this at noon, and we're kind of not sure if we can be in the chat and recreate a new chat or something. Some people told me
I'm not sure if we can rerun and be in a new chat.
If we can be there, we're gonna be there. If
did
not,
it for the first time yesterday. I ran a rerun yesterday. Yes, you can go and sit and chat and be with everyone.
Cool.
That's what I thought. Okay.
All right.
You can do that. Yeah.
Very cool.
Hi, rerun people. Lovely to see you.
With that in mind, Logan, do we want to try to do something during sponsor time?
Sure, we can try
during chat. During chat. Or during the rerun?
During chat. So if anybody can come back during our noon hour, probably at 1 o'clock when we do our ad break here, about the hour in, it's never quite right. We'll probably do a giveaway. Since we're sponsored by Die Hard Dice now, we get to do a giveaway every month. We talked about this being a pretty special episode, so we want to do it here. And I'm going to go ahead and throw down and say that we're going to do 2 today. I'm going to sponsor 1. We're going to go ahead and do 1 today, this morning, for the people that are here during our ad break, and then we'll do a different one for the people that come back and join us at noon. So if you don't win this morning, come back at noon. You can re-enter there and hopefully win there.
That should be fun. We have pretty dice to share.
I'm hype.
So did we explain the bandwagon?
No.
We're going to get off a tangent.
No, so the bandwagon is something that I want to do a longer piece on, so I'm going to be taking copious notes when we talk about it. The idea is what to do when everybody wants to do the same check roll.
I struggle with it all the time. 20 years of experience, I struggle with that.
How to offset it, how to stop it from happening, or how to run with it. Like, what are some home rules that you could maybe implement that makes that more interesting? If everyone decides to do it together, well, at least let's change up what it means to everyone roll together.
So the next one,
go ahead. We're going to talk about that one in
playing it safe, which is and I've watched Scratticus a lot, and I've watched read about his channel. I'm not able to read everything and learn everything. And of course, last night I was studying because we have a guest on and I want to know. And seeing that creating safe space is so important to Scratticus, and knowing how important it is to us and how much we have pushed really hard to make sure that our channel and our Discord and everything is a very extremely safe place for everyone to feel welcome. It was kind of nice to see that. And you're very openly blatant. That's like your shtick. It's like, hey, let's create the safe space. And shtick is a horrible word for that because that implies it might be kind of just for the sales, but it's not. It's who.
That's like your mission statement.
But it's the exact same thing for us. We aren't blatantly in front. It's not open in front of us because we are not as good as marketing. So we market Nerdsmith. We don't necessarily, but Nerdsmith is a safe place too. Anyway.
So we're going to talk about that idea.
We're going to talk about creating safe spaces, how to do it, and then why. I think, although that I would hope most people are like, okay, we get why.
Yeah. One thing in particular I'd love to talk about, Scratticus, since I guessed it on one of your games, I'd love to do a brief overview of sort of how you do that pre-game discussion. You did such a succinct and effective... You were so succinct and effective in doing that. I'd love to break that down a little bit so people can sort of see a little behind the scenes. This is the stuff you talk about.
Yeah, in that, and it kind of goes along with it, I think, is how do you handle session zeros for games like that? You can't just do a session zero every time and bring all the players together when you're talking about so many people coming in and out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too as we get to that. So, and that's probably will be the end of the episode right there, because that we will have talked that much. But if we continue,
but our backup topics, in case we go to.
We have a solid plan, but our true friends will be the content we create along the way.
There you go.
Absolutely.
So the other two subjects are going to be grouped together, or no, standing alone. Is that the next one? Yeah, standing alone.
Standing alone is the next one, which is something that we came up with the game last night. Sorry, I figured that one actually should be one I explained, since I'm the one that threw it on there last minute. We had the issue come up last night. It talks about more about how do you handle single player moments when you've got multiple players at the table. And I'm just kind of looking for a little advice myself. Again, 20-year DM, 10,000 plus hours, easy, still run into issues, and that's why we do shows like this. So that was that standing alone.
I'm excited, you guys.
And then we have Group Together, which was
that one you came up
other
with.
Topic that he wanted to talk about was how to formulate groups, the science of formulating groups, which is also something I'm very interested about. As somebody who sticks with my tribe a lot, and I have my small group, and we haven't really expanded yet. But I want to do more of like what Scratticus does. I want to do more of the one shots and bring new people into the game and learn new people's experiences, because I finally see that there's a side of gaming, having gone to Games for 2 years. I see a side of gaming that's very different now than it used to be, and it's a lot nicer. I like it. So I want to learn more about the science of creating groups. And then lastly, the one that we didn't get to last week, and I shoved it last again, I has a flavor, which is reflavoring classes and reflavoring different aspects of the game to kind of bring them to the forefront, make them new again, or to give somebody the abilities that they really want,
or to operate in a slightly different genre than is in rules as written. I'm specifically mentioning D&D 5e for that, but I have a really good example of sort of a sci-fi flavor of a class that worked really well in a game that I was running with my husband.
And then, of course, if we happen to get through everything as a reward, we get to have a little dance party.
That happens every time.
About it. I was going to say, it happens every time. We're just happy we got to the end of the episode. Made it through another one.
We made it. We made it, y'all.
We made it, yeah. I almost didn't make it through last night's episode. 103 episodes we're in now, and I'm like, this is it. This is the last one.
Oof. Yeah.
So we're in our playful banter section.
Firmly in the playful banter.
I didn't derail us to get back on track and try it, but now we can go back to the silliness. So Scratticus, why D&D? Why are you?
Why RPGs?
How did you get into it? How did you? Yeah, do you do a lot more than just D&D? I'm sorry, I need to remember that more people.
Because
I didn't start with D&D, so.
Yeah, no, I did start with D&D, but these days I've gone into a lot more than D&D. I'm trying to remember how many of my shows are D&D now. I think it's less than half. Maybe even a third. I can't remember. I've got a great memory. I don't use a diary and Excel spreadsheets to remember everything. That's a fallacy. But why? I was one of those people. I was an engineer before I became a streamer. And I was one of those people that had a poster on the wall for about 2 years, trying to get people to come around to mine to come and play D&D. Just putting the flag out there, like, there's a D&D club.
And you had this up in your house, so only you and your family saw it? Is that probably
No. This was in the factory. 700 people, 760 people, or something like that. I had it up on the main board, like D&D every Monday.
Like, you literally put a banner out there. That's amazing.
I literally put a banner out. Like, I was like, well, someone has to rally the flag. And to be fair, after 2 years, people came crawling out of the woodwork, and they were like, "So how's that D&D group going?" And
it's great. Here's your dice. Here's your pencil. Here's your paper. We meet every Tuesday at 10.
But one of the things I found was the thing that put people off was that they just didn't know how to play, and they were worried about coming along and making a fool of themselves, which is still a big thing. And Unfortunately, my IRL groups didn't go as well. Unfortunately, we were all very much one type of people, and that was engineers. And you know, I'm sure we all know the lies and scandal out there about engineers and social skills. But yeah, so essentially I did that, and then I was like, well, I was actually through Encounter Roleplay. I saw Encounter Roleplay live. I used to tune in every Tuesday to their Long March campaign, the first season, back when Josh was running it, way back when. I logged on and I was like, well, yeah, look at these guys. This is what I want to do. I want to do this. And it took me about 3 months to figure out how to get myself on a show. And then when I finally managed to subscribe... Sorry?
I was saying begging helps.
Pretty much, yeah. And then when I did get on, I managed to get myself on like a register, much like I do for people now. And it took me another month or so to get on, but I realized it was like, wow, 4 months to get on a show. And after I did one season first when I'd done one, because I was like, well, hell, I'll just run it. I was running video game streams at the time. Well, hell, I'll just run a season. And oh boy, I got the bug. And then I started making my thing. I was like, well, if people want to come and play brand new, they can come and play on my channel. Come on, everyone. And here we are now with, 40 shows a week? Maths?
Wait, 40
Much
shows
respect.
a week?
No. 40 hours.
Hours a
40,
week.
2 hours a week. There we go. I got that.
Wow.
I can maths. And say the
Engineer.
right words. Mm-hmm.
You haven't been an engineer for a couple of years, right? Is that it?
More like...
You lose those skills slip
Yeah,
away.
more like
a
4
little.
months. But yeah, we'll say
They
that's the
slip
reason.
away quickly sometimes.
Yeah, when you don't use maths, let's not
Yeah,
talk about dice
no,
being maths
no.
at all.
That's addition subtraction. That's
Here's a dice roller. It does things for me.
I was gonna say sometimes
True.
it feels like it takes 4 months for some players to get through their dice calculations, but that's a different story.
I feel called out.
We love them to death. We help them as much as we can. We encourage them to use digital dice roll.
I mean, I love digital dice rollers. It's the best. Being able to just click persuasion and persuasion number comes up. Oh boy. Like...
I just typically roll the dice and don't look at them and just make shit up. So there's that.
Don't tell the secret.
Well, it's not a secret. Although the other day we raided someone and they were hosting someone, which was really frustrating. But it doesn't tell you that anywhere unless you click into it. But we raided someone, and they the person they were hosting had a screen grab of Roll20 with a dice tray background and the digital dice rolling in it, and seeing a nat 20 roll in a 3D dice. I was like, that is amazing, because not only did everybody get to see it and got excited at the exact same time, but I got excited at the exact same time. And I was like, that was a shared moment that you don't see often in streaming games because you can't see the dice. Unfortunately, the 3D roller in Roll20 has a tendency to bog down resources, and I have like 50 programs open. I could never use it, but even on my very nice computer. But it was so exciting. I was like, oh, I love that feeling of just like everybody being able to just jump up and be really excited. And it's a feeling you get in-person games that you just don't see very often on that. So I'm hoping someday I might be able to make that happen. Everybody, all 16 of us need a second camera, and we'll just have the dice tray and your camera on the dice tray. And so nobody minds spending another $60 on a new camera, right?
No, not at
Okay,
all.
that's fine.
And there won't be any bandwidth issues, I'm sure. It's using the same Zoom, right? So no
Zoom, yeah.
bandwidth.
Well, we've had 25 people on our Zoom before for a town hall meeting, so
It has
that works
occasion.
great.
We have not tried to stream that though.
There was like 6 pixels a piece. I mean, it was amazing.
Oh, do you know what that reminds me of? So I said I used to do video games, right? So I actually started doing MMOs. I was playing Star Wars way back when.
Fair.
Yeah, the Old Republic. I started playing back when I was at uni. So I was on my uni laptop. And I used to heal 16-man raids by knowing my rotation on only 1 frame per second. So, like, I would just be going through my rotation and hoping. And then when the frame updated and all the helves would update, I'd be like, okay, so I need to focus my big heals on these people. And just, like...
That's freaking commitment to teamwork.
It used to work. It used to work. But the nice thing was, when I upgraded and got a decent computer that could actually run MMOs, I immediately became the guild's best healer. I was just like, I went from down here to just, whoop! It was like Goku had taken off his weighted pads, you know? I was suddenly like, oh, wow!
Very good.
Sorry, that reminded me of that. Nostalgia.
No,
man.
it's totally cool.
Nostalgia isn't what it used to be.
So I have a question. Do we want to dig in? Do we want to dig into our subjects and talk a little bit about stuff?
I'm ready.
We get to talk about fun stuff. Okay, so
Sorry,
Logan, I'm pushing this.
my child is leaving for school, and I'm not used to having to deal with that. She's not usually here or they're not usually here when we're streaming. So her phone wasn't working, so I had to come in. Sorry. Yeah, they're off. So
They had the best reaction to you being up this morning.
Yeah, they came in. I was on stream with Angela, and they said, "What? You're streaming this early? What the?" I was like, "You are." But then I just looked at it and went, "Mood." All right, I'm learning the slang. We had a lot of slang issues last night.
Oh, sorry. The not yet in touch with the other side of our generational spectrum.
No, I'm too old. I'm way too old.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up with memes, and I grew up learning about all that stuff, so I can kind of keep up. And I grew up adapting. You know, I'm what some people are trying to call in-betweenials. But you know, I grew up without electronics. I remember what it was like without electronics. I remember that world. And then I grew up with the brick phone, and then I grew up with the little phone. Then I had the StarTAC, which I paid $1,000 for. And then you know, you grew up, and you know, I sold phones for a while, and when it was actually profitable. And then, you know, you keep going up and up and up, and you know, going up with the technology now, it's easy to adapt to somebody like me. But you know, my child has, you know, really never not had a phone, you know, since she was 9 or 10. Walking to school, we're like, no, you've got to have a phone. Got to know where you are.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I came in just as that was sort of like, so like, I think when I was 9, I had one of the ones with, like, you know, the Matrix style one with the aerial you can pull out and it folds out.
Or they fold out.
Is that what it was called? Is that what it was called? Because I was too young to know what it was called, but I know it was I know it was like a Matrix, you know, and that's what was important.
That was like the original fidget spinner was just
yeah.
I had a pager and used it at one time. That can tell you a lot about how old I am. So,
do you know what I miss though from those times? I used to work in a
pager code.
Shop. No, I used to work in a paper shop. Okay, so what I used to have unlimited access to gaming magazines, where I could just the back couple of pages always used to fall open anyway. So cheat codes. That was the only way to get cheat codes before websites were around. So like, I was the cool kid at school that was like, "Hey, do you want some Vice City codes? Do you want some Vice City codes?" I was like some sort of like drug dealer. Like, "Hey, want some Vice City codes? I can tell you, R2, L2, L1."
I had a Game Genie as a kid with my Sega Game Gear. I had that.
Oh yeah.
Had the little itty bitty black book that you had to flip through to find the games. And
Oh yeah.
I remember I had when they first came out with the internet. Yes, I'm that old. When it was first popular in AOL, and actually before that there was other things that we don't talk about. They started coming out with new codes and things on Game Gees for new games, and you had to go and scour, and it was a dark time.
I remember there was a friend of ours. There was the only friend that, and I won't name names or anything because I'm not sure if it is still illegal. I doubt it. But he was the only friend who knew how to crack a PlayStation and make cracked discs and so you could start things up with the Game Shark codes and you could just pick the ones you want, and it was the coolest thing.
Nice. That's awesome.
Oh, it was like an early coding den sort of thing, you know. Like, oh,
that's amazing. All right.
So
playful banter for 35 minutes. You think
sounds good.
Some actual
yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, we could do this for 2 hours. I'm sure people would love it, but
it's not like
most. Get into some talk.
It's not like most of our other things are also not playful banter, but they're just targeted playful banter.
Angela, why am I being the adult here? You said when we started this that you were going to be the adult and keep us on track.
I was trying to, and then you started talking again. Scratticus can back me up here. I said, do we want to talk about a subject on our list?
There was an attempt.
With my child?
Yes,
Is
it
that
was.
Okay, all right.
That was
I
a
apologize.
valiant
I didn't hear.
attempt, to be fair.
Yes, all right.
I
Okay.
tried.
So you were trying to adult. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the first subject on our session plan is the sweetest thing. What is a very positive, awesome experience that you remember? And I'm going to say from playing or DMing, because I think the definition for what is awesome can be very different depending on what your role in the game is. So if anybody has a good example, I have a decent DMing example of. Okay, so one of the first times I tried DMing, I was DMing a duet for my husband, and it was like a dungeon with puzzles and stuff, which in retrospect, not the smartest thing because puzzles with one person can be very complicated. When you have more than one person, they can bounce off each other. When you have one person, they get stuck. You're just sitting there like, come on, you can figure this out. Let's go. But so I had just researched a bunch of puzzles and like traps and stuff just to see if there was something fun. And I found one that was having a mirror in a room and having a fully set dining table in the room. And when you look at the mirror, it has an identical setup, except there's one thing different on the mirror version of the dining set. And the puzzle is to make the real world dining set match what's in the reflection. And I was like, okay. So he's he's a rogue. He's very perceptive. He might want to study the room a little bit. And my husband broke a plate on the dining table, and I went, okay, sure. And then he proceeded to trash the dining table. And I went, okay. The dining table in the mirror looks exactly the same. And he's like completely out of his mind, not sure what to do. And I'm like, I don't know what to do either. You broke my puzzle. And so he starts picking around on the wall. Like, all right, I look for a secret door. And I'm like, okay, there's a tapestry on the wall. And when you look behind the tapestry, there's a storage room full of duplicates of everything that was on the table. So he then figured out that he could reassemble what was on the table. And he got it eventually, but that little bit of like, okay, I had to think about how he could fix what he broke was a very satisfying moment for me as a newbie DM that I had figured out. He didn't know I had to make that up on the fly. He thought I'd had that planned. I'm like, heck no, I did not.
Beautiful. I mean, I could easily think of a player game. I mean, that's the thing. I think sometimes when you have a good moment, it affects the whole game, right? It was when I started playing for the first time the character Johnny Deep that I'm currently playing Thursdays 10 p.m. The first time I ever played him, I just decided that I was, as the name suggests, just going to do a sort of kind of hack of Captain Sparrow, kind of sort of threw my voice down a little bit into a pirate sort of slang, and we just started rolling dice. First dice came out on a nat 20, and I was like, okay, cool. We found some gremlins, which are all about rum. Got a nat 20 on my constitution check for the rum as well, and gained permanent
that
resistance
is the best pirate I've ever seen.
He is so lucky. He had the worst plans, but I was rolling so well. I think in one session I rolled 8 nat 20s. And I can honestly say that my best experience as a player was standing in the crow's nest of my enemy's ship, cutting down their flag and replacing it with my own. Shortly before diving backwards off the end of the sail into the water with 7 HP to go and parlay with an undead baby kraken. Because by this point, I had convinced every monster I had encountered to join my party, and why should the kraken be any different?
Any different. I love that. That's some good DMing there. That sounds like a really good DM in that game.
That was Laugh Love Lindy, and Long May She Reign.
That's amazing. Okay, so for me, I'll save my other moment because it's actually not a DM or player moment; it's just a gaming moment. But my player moment, one of my favorites for as a player, and I don't get to do that often, was very recently. Have you ever heard of the caveman role playing game Og?
I think I've heard of, but never played.
Og is a fairly complex indie game, but the premise is what I love about it. Og was introduced by a friend of mine to me. The premise is you're a caveman, and you're either one of 5 different types. You're a tough caveman, a smart caveman, a dexterous caveman, whatever. The main stats. And you only know 2 words. And you have to role play with those 2 words. Everything you do has to be those 2 words. And it's amazing. But what's even more amazing is when you take that concept and you adapt it to other things. We had run a Pixie game once, and my wife, we do bonus content on the Nerdsmith Network as a thank you to our subscribers. So we had, for our podcast Shenanigans, we wanted to do some bonus content. And she said, my character in the game is going to run a game of Og for the other characters in the game. We're going to make it a role-playing game within a role-playing game. And she said to me, you could play one of the NPCs. But she said, I'm not going to do Og. I'm going to do Squawk. And you're going to play parrots. And so it makes sense. You only know 2 or 3 words, and they're all a list of pirate words you have to choose from. So you have to role play everything with these words. And our goal as these parrots were to take the treasure from our oppressive overlords and steal their ship and get away. And I thought this was hilarious, but the real fun came when my wife was like, you should play Pugnut, the goblin we met in the Underdark, this mushroom harvester. They created this alcohol down there and from fungus, this drippy, gooey fungus. And they met him, and it was the only friendly person they met down there, really. But you should play Pugnut. And I'm like, that's amazing. So we got into the game, and I'm like, going, okay, how can I make this game my own? Well, she had come up with a bunch of things, but she didn't come up with a charismatic parrot option. And I was like, wait, where's the pretty parrot? I need a pretty parrot. And she goes, okay, so we created a pretty parrot on the fly, which she's amazing at that. And so we're sitting down to play, and it's a very silly indie game. It takes about an hour. But I realized about 10 minutes into it that Pugnut has no idea what a parrot is. And so the entire group were sitting there, and they're like talking about parrots. I say, "Oh, okay." I can't remember his voice. Oh, yeah, this is good. Yeah. So my character, my parrot jumps up on the ledge there, and then he takes his tentacle and he reaches underneath and opens the chest. And they're like, "The parrots don't have tentacles." Oh, okay, all right. Well, I use my mandibles, and then I'll open the chest. And they're just like, "Fine. You use your mandibles and open the chest." And so every time I did something, I added something new from an Underdark creature. So in the end, we had this freaky little cryptid that Angela, I think, drew. Do you have that around?
I have it.
Okay,
I did it in Sharpie at some point. It was funny.
I was like, this was it just took that game to, this game that was a silly, goofy little game, but you grab on what you've got. I'm like, when I'm playing this character who's playing the character, he doesn't know what role playing is. He doesn't know what a parrot is. I'm like, he really doesn't know. And that was one of my favorite as a player moments in general. And I was just like, it just turned a game that was good into something that was really special in my mind. I think everyone kind of agrees with that. And I'm not trying to try and hone there.
No, it was really good. That was really, really inspired.
That was a good one.
Let me see. I would love to pick something from a game Logan ran. There are a lot of moments as a player that are really, really special, and I love them. But the one that I like to share the most isn't from a Logan game, because it's like one of my formative characters. I'm sorry. You probably know this already. It involves 2 little anecdotes. My character was a tiefling named Poetry, and she was a bard. And she was incredibly overconfident in herself, and she worshipped Evandra, the goddess of luck, and was just like, everything's coming up Poetry, like, it's all great. And we played a game in which we were conscripted into the Waterdeep Navy because there was like a, what do you call it? people get a draft. There was a draft, and we all got pulled into the Navy and had to go to boot camp. And that was our first episode. Was we had to go through military boot camp, and so we had to go through a obstacle course. And our boot camp drill sergeant said the only rule is that you can't be one of the last 3 people to cross the finish line at the end of the obstacle course. And I went, okay. I cast sleep on 3 of the other competitors in the obstacle course, proceeding to try to get ahead. And I proceeded to roll 3 natural ones to get through the first obstacle. Karma bit me in the butt. My character was like, okay, Avandra, I get it. I wasn't supposed to do that.
The dice know, you know.
And I ended up being the last person to finish the obstacle course because I just kept climbing a wall and falling off it. And it was just so good that this character, I had started her being so confident, and I just ended up leaning into that overconfidence for the rest of the campaign. But she got picked last and therefore was designated by her drill sergeant to be the lieutenant officer of the cadets. If they fail, you fail. So you're now in charge of making sure nobody else is as big of a fuck up as you are. That was a very fun character moment. And then the second thing that happened to her was she got murdered by a were-tiger in the jungle by herself. She died alone, and it was scary and horrible, and it was our second session, and my character died. I had painted a Hero Forge mini. I was so excited, and my DM's like, I actually really liked poetry. I'm so sorry. Hold on. I'm going to finish, and I'll get back to you. And so what had happened was my character had stolen a ring from our captain, who was really super shady, and he'd cast magic out of it. And I went, okay, fine, Tiger's gonna get me. So I put the ring on, and I try to cast something, and I die. At the end of the session, everyone is just sort of recovering, and she turns back to me and says, you wake up in darkness, there's a light, and an undead figure hovers ahead of you. And a lich proceeded to tell me that my captain was his former warlock, and that I apparently am worth taking a second look at. So if I sign a contract, he will bring me back to life. And I went, yeah, fuck yeah. And so I just wake up with scars all over my body after being mauled by this tiger. And she said, all of your levels of bard are gone. Take 3 levels of warlock and get back to me. And so, the rest of the campaign, I was secretly a warlock. Nobody else in the party knew that I had died and come back to life because nobody saw that I had been murdered, and spent the rest of the campaign having creepy old one powers. that was awesome. So good. But I loved it. Actually, hold on.
What is it with tigers in games? I've never put a tiger in a game and it ended well.
But this is poetry, and she's wonderful.
Oh, nice.
I got her illustrated. I happened to, the construction workers knocked picture frames off my wall, so I took it down in preparation so it didn't break anything. But yeah, that was a primo character experience. I really, really enjoy her. I'll bring her back someday.
Talking of having tigers in games, we had a moment in the finale last season of our Curse of Strahd campaign where, the tiger gets out in Valaki and starts hunting people in the streets, and it's a real bad time for everyone. My wife Alice resolved that encounter not with combat, but by rolling really well on animal handling, and we did a whole scene where essentially it was like she was telling our cat off, and I started just playing the role of our cat, and she basically commanded the cat back into its cage.
Probably worked better in game than it does in real life.
Oh yeah, definitely. Doesn't work at all.
That is the most fantastical part. Is that a word? I don't know. Fantastical part about role playing games is the fact that you can use animal handling on cats. I think that is just that's where my wall is. It's just that's. But big cats are trainable, so that's okay.
Yeah.
So do you have your DM moment?
Yeah, I mean, I have lots. That's the issue. I think we all have this problem. Like when Angela was speaking, then she reminded me of a time I had as a DM where one of my characters died in combat with our first demon. We were on the Greyhawk channel at the time, doing Uprising in the Perrin Lands, which was set in the Perrin Lands long after Igvilv had died and the Perrin Lands had settled and the towns had grown and all the rest of it. But those of you who are aware of Igvilv, or Natasha as the Eight, as she's also known, will know that she's one who likes to bide her time and come back stronger. And I had them play through the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, the 1972 module, which I reskinned for 5e by setting it about 100 years later and how the cavern would have changed. And the beauty of it was that my player died in this combat outside of the caverns and was greeted by this beautiful woman in golden armor who, you know, said, look, I can. She was being chased by Death. She was having death dreams. You know, Death was chasing her across a field. Death was holding her in his arms. All these sort of wonderful things. And this person was like, look, I can save you from death. All you have to do is accept my gift. You will get some of my abilities, but I need you to go and save my daughter in these caverns. So I managed to turn it not only into a plot hook to get us to the thing and the time, because as you all know, streamed sessions, you've only generally got about 12, 16 episodes a season before things start needing to go on to another season or something else, at least over on our quarterly shows. So she accepted. And this led to, in our finale, a 45-minute to an hour conversation between the party wizard and the party paladin. The party paladin was the one that was now a vampire. And the party paladin was convincing the wizard that it might not be a bad thing if they all became vampires, because that way they could reduce the collateral damage. Like,
I love it. Perfect. I love it. That's great. I love moments like that. That's what they're all about, right? That's the whole point of this. It's amazing.
Indeed.
So my last one, although my wife has some amazing suggestions for DM moments, I'm actually going to tell a little bit of a different story. I'm going to talk about, really briefly, because I know we need to move on. I want to talk about what I believe is the initial point, the cause, the whole reason Nerdsmith exists. And it goes back to a convention locally here called SAC Anime. And one of the people on our show, a very good friend of mine, ours, and a lot of people's, and I understand it's going to be on your show soon, Scratticus, Caden, who I know you've got a lot of names out there. Caden went to SAC Anime dressed as, I want to say Vex.
Probably. He's got a really good Vex.
Okay, and my wife went, and my wife really wanted to go and wanted me to go, but we had our daughter, and I needed to stay home with our daughter. It just wasn't going to happen, all three of us going. It was her birthday, and she wanted to go and meet the cast of Critical Role. And so she was in line to meet the cast of Critical Role, who was up there. And one of the reasons why I didn't want to go, because we probably could have made it work, but the previous year we'd gone to a convention because my daughter wanted to cosplay as Raven. Although for me, it'll always be in my mind Hit Girl because they're very similar. But I told her, if we're going to do Hit Girl, I'm going to teach her how to cuss. And Tessa didn't like that. Actually, she was probably all for it, but we didn't want Grandma to hear about it. That was but I had met someone, and I won't talk about who it is, but I met somebody who was one of my heroes from a television show, and it was a very bad experience. And I went, I don't want to meet anyone from any entertainment again. I was kind of done with it, and I was in a hermity kind of mode. I was like, I didn't want to see anybody. All of my friends had stopped role playing. We weren't role playing a lot, and it was just a very bad time and headspace wise in my life. And Tessa goes up there and she gets in line with the Critical Role to get signatures. She gets to Travis, and he says, he takes time with everyone. Oh, they all do. They're amazing. And they weren't all there. I don't think Mercer was there. I don't think that Sam was there. But he got to Travis and said, he's like, oh, tell what's going on. Hey, glad you're here. And she goes, yeah, my husband's at home taking care of the kiddo so I can be here, and because I really want to see you guys. And Travis got up out of line, out of his seat, ran over, grabbed one of their 8.5 by 11 glossies that has all their faces on it, got every one of the cast members to sign it, and gave it to her to give to me. as a thank you for taking care of your child so your wife could come here and be with us. And that moment sticks in my brain as there are decent people in this person is famous. This person is getting paid to sign autographs. Just gave me $100 autograph because there were 4 or 5 signatures on it because he was a decent person. And every one of them had no problem signing it because they're decent people. They're amazing people, and they think of other people. And I went, I want to get to know them. I want to meet them. And I've had many opportunities to meet a lot of the castings, and I've never had a chance to meet Travis. I'm very frustrated. I really want to meet Travis and tell him that story. But I've met a lot of them at this point. They're all incredible, amazing people. And they, I think that, even though I was watching Critical Role all the time, and that is what opened me up into role-playing with Caden and his group, which then opened up us to playing Tolis and introducing the Angela. And when we were talking with Angela and doing our first West Marches style campaign, where we did 1,000-ish hours over 6 months, that was just a private campaign. We came up with the idea of Nerdsmith, and I went, I think I'm ready to open up to the community again. I have a lot to offer, and I hope that my goal is always in my life with my business and everything is to build other people up. I want to help other people succeed in their goals. And I said, if we start a network, we can help people. I can take the nitty gritty. I've got 12 years of experience with graphic design. Angela's graphic design. Angela has musical experience, having been involved with the Cantata Pentathical and having basically rewritten Hamilton for Critical Role and producing all the music along with Will Crosswaite. I was like, we as a team with my wife and her executive experience, and we'd be unstoppable. And I said, so let's do it. And they foolishly agreed. And then that's Nerdsmith. That's where Nerdsmith came from. And so our whole goal now is to take the nitty gritty work off of people. And I didn't mean this to be, even though we're about to go into our ad break, I didn't mean this to be an ad for Nerdsmith. It's not. But the goal is to allow creators to create more by taking off the nitty gritty work. And of course, my wife, as another moment, side moment real quick, that's part of that. One day, I don't know if you've ever listened to the Adventure Zone. They were the first campaign, but one day my wife is sitting next to me, and we were starting to kind of get into this idea, and she's crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? She's like, oh, I'm just listening to the finale of the Adventure Zone. I'm like, I really should get into that. And the next day I started it because she was up till 2 a.m. listening to it because it had just released, or she had just gotten to it. And the next morning I started listening to it, and I called her halfway through the first episode or the second episode. I said, they just destroyed an entire city, and we're sitting there going, wow, we just killed 1,000 people. I'm so hard right now. I'm like, is this the same podcast you were listening to that you were crying for 2 hours last night? What? And she's like, you just have to get there. I was like, I was so skeptical, which opened up the idea of getting into Critical Role and Mabim Bam, learning about Maximum Fun and their model. And then it all kind of came together. And that moment to me is such an important moment. I can trace it all the way back to that little one good deed that Travis did for my wife, for me. And it's like all of this comes from that. And I was like, that is one of my favorite gaming related stories. So sorry, I didn't mean to take so long, but
no, fantastic.
It matters.
I probably told that story here before. Well, thank you, Fennec. You don't get a dance party for 500 bits on this channel, though. You can come to our other one. Thank you so much, though. We really do appreciate that. And all the support that we've got, and a lot of the support that goes to the network and things, and all the money that goes through Countless Heroes goes to the Trevor Project, all of the artist proceeds, anyway. I can do that automatically now because that was the only streaming thing we had for a long time, and now I talk about it here, too, so I don't know. But anyway, so we should do a quick ad break. We should do a quick little talk about our sponsor and do a giveaway. And,
sure. What do you have?
It's winner's choice. Any for Die Hard Dice, our amazing sponsors. We just signed on not only as a partnership with the Nerdsmith Network, and they have now, as of yesterday, agreed to sponsor every show on the network that is interested in being involved with special coupon codes, and hopefully very soon in the future giveaways for the entire shows. But also, they're doing a lot of other smaller things in the background for us. They're amazing. But this show, we partner with them. We're going to be releasing a video series, hopefully starting next week. We're trying to get it locked down because there's a lot to do about intros and outros and things. Once we get all that locked down, hopefully bi-weekly, if not weekly, we'll be releasing our videos through their blog first. It'll be exclusive content on there for a week, and then after that, it'll come over here as we release the next thing through them. So we've actually created a very connected partnership with Die Hard Dice, and they're amazing people. One of the reasons we love Die Hard Dice is, as a designer and somebody who deals with a lot with intellectual property, I wanted somebody who was not just reselling dice, but actually creating them themselves. And they are 3D designers. The dice they create are their designs, the metal ones, not the plastic, but the metal ones. They're working on the plastic. And that, when I found that out, that was really important to me. But really, I'd say thank you to a friend of mine, Jess. We were trying to work with a different company for months and months, and I just it never really went through. And we come on hold for them, and then I asked my friend Jess, who runs is a mod for a lot of the dice groups on Facebook. I don't know why I didn't ask them before. She's like, "Why didn't you come to me months ago?" I'm like, "I know." She introduced me to Todd from Die Hard Dice, and it was instant happiness. We were both very happy with each other. They listen to a few shows on the network, and now he listens to WND Radio constantly, evidently. Very happy with that. So we are very happy to have Die Hard Dice. Their giveaway, though, is one of any product on the site. I highly recommend the poly metal sets. So up to a 7 set of poly metal dice, which I think is a $50-ish value or something. They'll include that and free shipping to the winner. And so all you have to do is pick out the product, let our moderator Fennec know, who's in the chat there, and she will do that. So I need to get that set up. So I'm gonna let you talk for a second about that. So our sponsor more, because I should have done it before.
Oh,
Is that international free shipping?
Let's say
Good
yes for
question.
now. Merchants will cover a little extra. If not, they have not said no to international free shipping. I don't know that they want to do that all the time, but they have not said no to that. As part of our thing, they are being very generous to us right now.
Yeah,
They've sponsored 7 shows with free giveaways every month, and coupon codes for every show. Angela can give you the details on the coupon code. But for they're working. We are slowly going to grow to them being sponsors like that for the entire network. They said so. All right now, 17 shows, soon to be 19 shows. By the end of this year, probably 30 shows.
Logan, am I correct? The coupon code for us is DFRPG. DRPG. Yes,
DRPG.
Yes. So if you go to dieharddice.com and use DRPG as the code, you get, what was the code? I'm really ill-prepared, Logan. What was the code for?
DRPG, 15% off your first or next order. The code works once for anyone.
But yeah, they were tremendously generous. They are one of those sponsors that want to make sure that we, have the product in our hand to actually talk about it and not just shill for them. So they were really, really nice about the shows getting dice so we can try them out and have a good time with them and be able to very sincerely and genuinely talk about how fun they are. Can't hear you, Logan. You went quiet.
And we're very proud to be part of the Nerdsmith Network, which I'm all crackly now, and I don't know why. Am I crackly to you guys?
Little. Just popping.
A little? Okay, great. But mostly because we own it. But also, even if we weren't, they're an awesome organization. And Ange can talk a little bit about Nerdsmith, right?
Sure, I can talk about Nerdsmith.
Sorry, I normally handle this, but I forgot to get this set up.
It's okay. So Nerdsmith is the network that we helped found, but we are also proud members. We have lots of podcasts and streamers and a new and improved functioning website currently live when it wasn't live for a little while. So we're at nerdsmith.org. You can find a bunch of our content there. And let me see, what are some of the things we have? We have a sci-fi campaign called Chaotic Goodness. They are a bunch of really goofy, fun people. They occasionally stream, but they're mostly a podcast. We have Monster Crush, which is a show with the delightful Heavenly and Ellie, where they discuss dating cryptids. Heavenly is a cryptid expert, and Ellie doesn't know much of anything about it. So Heavenly presents a monster or two, and Ellie decides who she'd rather date. So I'm quite amused by their show. They are very charming and delightful. You have something to say?
We also launched a brand new show on Monday.
We did. The Land Above is a new actual play podcast with previous listeners, current members of the network now, since they're players, playing a campaign of Underdark creatures and people that are milling about under the surface. That should be very, very fun, run by Matthew Siebert. So they are a brand new group into the game, or into the Nerdsmith biome. But yeah, we're at some point going to be launching. Matt Siebert's also got a streaming show coming up when we have that. We've got it pretty locked down. Can I just
homebrew studio? Yeah, we've talked about it before.
Yeah,
so it'll be on Wednesdays in the afternoon. We're also going to be adding a new show, and I know there's some crackle right now, guys. I think it's because I opened this program and I'll close it in just a second. But we're also going to be adding potentially this month a whole new day of streaming. We're going to add either Tuesday or Thursdays. We haven't decided which yet, but I'm going to be taking off another day from the 9 to 5. And moving it onto the network because my wife is amazing and is going to let me. We're in a position now where I think it's necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and close this real quick here. Exclamation die hard if you want to enter. So last chance here if you want to go ahead and enter. Also, if you are on another show in the network and you want to enter in this show, that is okay according to the rules of the network and Die Hard. We have no problems with that. So just because you're on a different show, as long as you're not one of the overseeing hosts, you are absolutely allowed to enter. So
darn. No, I'm happy with my dice. I'm not going to get greedy.
I'm not going to be a host. That's the problem.
But I'm tempted, if it's any indication.
A lot, yeah. I'm not worried about it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this, guys. So we're going to pick a winner in 3, 2, 1.
Autumn.
Okay, did that fix the crackle? No, it did not.
Yes, you don't have a crackle. I don't hear crackle.
I hear a crackle from you guys. All right.
Regardless,
yay audio.
Lasalante Nariel, aka Autumn, you are the winner for the dice. Good job. Such skill with the forces of luck you have.
So just go on and pick which set you want. Send the link to Fennec, and we will get a special coupon code for you that you will be able to use to purchase it with free shipping and everything.
Woo woo. Thank you guys for participating in that.
Yes,
we're very excited.
We really appreciate that. Let me
very excited to be able to share this with you.
And I'll be right back. Is that better? Crackle gone?
Yeah.
No, it's still there. All right, I'll just live with it. You guys can't hear it, so that's good, right?
It's very minor.
Very minor. It's fine.
I hate audio. All right.
How about we?
It is the bane of my existence.
How about we start trying to plow through some of the other subjects then?
Yeah, let's go through some other subjects.
Okay,
we've done one so far, right?
That's we have done one. Yeah.
That's better than we usually do at this point.
All right, so the next subject we have is the bandwagon. I think any DM is probably aware of this particular circumstance. You introduce a concept to a character, they have to go investigate, or they have to go talk to a person, and they want to sort of catch if that person's on the level, and they say, I roll an insight check, and then 15 other people go, I also roll an insight check. And you end up having a bit of a dog pile, or as we're calling it, the bandwagon. Lots of people hopping onto one skill check, and that can get a little overwhelming or a little counterproductive to what you actually are trying to achieve. So we want to talk a little bit about some strategies, some advice for either how to avoid that happening, or maybe talk about whether or not it really is a bad thing or not, and maybe if there's ways of mitigating it a little bit, or ways of working with that impulse that your players might have to roll all at the same time.
So for me, the concern that I've always had with this is that as soon as you have one person say something, they've come up with a really good idea, especially with something I hadn't thought of. And then all of a sudden, like, everyone's like, oh, that's a great idea. I want to do that too, because they want to maximize the chances of success, or they want their character to kind of have a moment, but they don't necessarily realize they're kind of taking something from that person. At least that's how I feel when I'm in a group of 6 and I come up with a really cool idea, and all of a sudden everyone's doing it, and oh, you rolled a lot better than I did, so I guess you're doing it. Okay. And I'll just sit back. So it gets it can be a little frustrating as a player.
Okay. So I like this scenario. I enjoy it. This is one of my things. So maybe it's because I'm British and I love an awkward silence, but I like it when things get a little tense. And I think it's one of them things that every situation demands a different response.
Sure.
So sometimes I'll use the cipher system sort of way of mitigating things, which is the too many cooks. If there's something that one person does it, it's easy, but actually when you think about it, if two people did it, it would double the difficulty, etc., etc. I start giving disadvantage or putting heavier penalties on. But when you get it, and it is like an insight check, like you say, and everyone can jump on. If it makes sense that everyone in that room would be getting a read on them, which often is narratively. I mean, a lot of human interaction is mostly judgment. First impressions make a big impact on everyone, and then from there, you're kind of constantly judging everyone that you speak to without ever really consciously being aware of it. I like to kind of take a moment to talk to the player briefly, and it doesn't have to be private or anything, but just, inform them. So here's your scenario. You've just seen that your friend who is leading this conversation has spotted this deceit, let's say. He's currently leading the conversation. If you undermine his authority, the person's going to think less of you as a group, for example. And I put it... My way of dealing with everything is to just bat it back to the player to deal with, essentially. So I just, the awkwardness that I'm feeling about this as a DM, I'm worried that they're going to steal the thunder from someone else. I just give directly to them. I just say, well, look, you're going to steal their thunder. So how does your player deal with this?
That's pretty good. I like that a lot.
Being a little more meta with it.
Well, with Insight or something like that, I try to use passive insight a lot. Now that they've added that to the character sheet, as soon as I saw that, I was like, that should have been there the whole time. It was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, a lot of times it has to do with, especially when people are searching something or spread out in a room and somebody's off on their own, and then all of a sudden 3 people are like, we want to do that too. It's like, it doesn't make sense to me, and I feel bad for kind of wanting to step in and be like, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's probably important to remember things like I think people always talk about failing forward, but I think there's also succeeding backwards. Like you can if one person goes on a sneak stealth mission and they roll for something and they succeed, great, they've done it. But if they fail and then suddenly you've got 5 people all trying to be stealthy, yeah, okay, sure, you can unlock the door or get whatever your mission was, but I don't care how many of you rolled well on your stealth, you've alerted the guards. 5 people sneaking down a corridor, and you need to be some sort of like shadow assassins for that,
Right.
Just throw in those extra mechanics of like, every action has a positive and opposite reaction,
Something that I'd considered, the idea that when you're building your character sheet in the first place, and my frame of reference is almost always 5e D&D, but you have people building up their skill sets, and you have certain things that you say have proficiency in, have expertise in. I would be inclined that if multiple people, at least in some situations, if multiple people were to try to roll, I would give precedence to either the person who instigated it or the person who actually is super skilled in it, with the logic of your character is someone who is highly trained in this ability. I think their brain works that way. They're the one who thinks to look at things like that. Someone who has, and I almost want to say during game, or rather outside of game, trying to coach your players a little bit to maybe think about it that way, that I'm going to make adjudications based on the fact that the ranger has proficiency in survival because they've been spending their entire life looking for tracks. They know how to find certain information. Their eyes go to the ground when they're trying to find somebody. Whereas a wizard who might not have that sort of expertise it might not even occur to them to start there. So having everybody suddenly make the survival check, it just might not be the mode of problem solving that certain characters jump to right away. And so trying to get them to turn their mechanics into more personality and character building moments, understanding that not everybody's going to be able to roll this one check because some of you just don't think about it that way. You don't see life in that perspective.
And a lot
totally
of what
valid.
I've started to do, a lot of what I've started to do is to talk about proficiencies. It's like, is your character trained to do this? I mean, if not, then maybe it doesn't make sense that they step in to do that. So as just kind of a quick rule of thumb, when people want to jump in and help or do something, I'll be like, well, if you're trained, you're welcome to help. If you're not trained, though, get out of the doctor's way. You know, if the doctor's doing a medicine check and you're not trained, what do you think you're going to do? You know, it's like, I can hold this water bowl. It's like, well, that's probably not enough to give an advantage. So I've started to use proficiency as kind of that threshold.
Yeah, and that's what I say about the too many cooks situation. If there is someone untrained in medicine trying to help a doctor, that's where I might say, yeah, sure, but you're going to impose a disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, and investigating a room. Investigating a room, you could disrupt evidence if somebody's just tooling around trying to find something. It's like, you don't find anything because you suddenly see footprints and you follow it around and it's the barbarian who's been traipsing all over the room and you now don't have any clues for anything.
Again, though, like, I try not to resolve those things behind the screen so much because I also think it's a great way, like you say about your players being coached into doing the things that their character's good at. I think by like batting it back to the players, you can also encourage the character development. So your character will develop with your players. So, you know, you can, I mean, it doesn't have to be like the way I said it before, where the person feels guilt about, you know, imposing on them because, you know, not all players feel a whole lot of guilt, rogues. You know, you could instead, what the rogue does have a lot of is pride, usually. And what you can say to someone is, hey, so you're sneaking down this corridor. You're doing a great job sneaking. You haven't picked the lock on the first try, but you probably get it on your second or third, except, hang on a minute, the barbarians just joined you. They're kind of sneaking down the hallway. You know, they probably rolled, what, barbarian stealth, let's say 13 on a good day. You know, they're kind of sneaking.
I feel called out. I'm offended.
They come along.
But it's true.
They come along, they're going to try and help you pick the lock. How do you react to this? And usually, a rogue will be like, what the fuck are you doing?
I love that. That's a good idea, yeah.
One of the things that I also saw, I was looking in a Reddit thread about this exact thing, how to determine group metagame checks. The idea that you can work with the system, especially with insight checks or investigation checks, things that would allow you to garner different pieces of information. You could also, depending on who rolls well, you can parse out different pieces of information to each of them. You could say, so this guy is talking to them, everyone does an insight check, and you go to each person, you say, all right, you see that he's got a little bit of sweat going here. You see that he's like sort of glancing off to the side or out a door. You could piece those things together for them. Don't outright say, yeah, you can tell he's lying, but you add those qualitative things that could be added together to equal what you could actually just outright say to somebody who'd rolled like a nat 20. Same with investigation. Everybody finds a little bit of information, so everyone feels like they're helping. That might not lessen the likelihood that they roll altogether if you start rewarding it, but a healthy mix of you guys all get information and some of you fuck up the person who's actually trained to do this. At least it adds a little bit of uncertainty to someone's decision to all lump into a roll.
I think that's a great idea. I love this idea, that the too many cooks situation. I'm definitely going to use that one. No,
Note to any Countless Heroes players in the chat right now.
Person's like, oh, we want to do that too. Okay, I mean, that's, you know, you're like all trying to shove into this one little room to look around for these secret doors. You know, that's you're hitting, bumping into each other, and I could totally see one person could be very meticulous. You have 6 people and you're like, oh, he probably already checked that. Oh, that's an obvious place. So Logan, people look there.
A group investigation check is just an escape room. No, you gotta go over there. No, stop. This is my spot.
I love that.
But the other thing as well that you can do, you use the escape room analogy, is you can use escape room logic. I don't know if you guys have ever looked into this, but quite often the most common thing that people do in an escape room is they'll find the answer and then someone else will doubt it and the group will move away from the correct answer. That's the number one reason for failing escape rooms, is they figure it out, but then they second guess themselves.
Oh, that we just do that naturally. We don't have to set that up. Like, our party just does that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we for getting ready for Countless Heroes, we had about 22 applicants. I wanted to keep about 12 to 14 people. We ended up keeping 16. Originally it was 17. We had one person drop, but I ran them through a series of different types of games. So I wanted to just test people in different situations. I created an entire escape room, a magical escape room for one of them, and I improved it because I ran the same session for every player. So we did 3 groups of 4 or 6 or whatever it was. I think it was 6, and 4 times. And so I got to improve it for each person. Like, okay, this didn't work, or like one of the things I learned was the item should disappear when they no longer need it. That was a big help because they sat there and go, well, we've got this item still. What can we do with it? It's like, you did it. You used it. And that's kind of what you're saying there. This idea that, like, well, we still have it, so we got to use it again. It's like, no, once it's used once, throw it away.
Yeah, and I always try to avoid as well stepping in when they are going wrong. I love to just let my players, like, I'll just give them all the rope. You know, you tie that noose, you go for it.
I love to a point that they're no longer having fun. Once they get to the point where they're just like,
yes.
And
then you let us make intelligence rolls, please.
Well, I learned in that moment, you know, the reason I did these, so I did one that was a combat session, one that was a heavy role play, one that was puzzle based, and you start to learn, okay, these are my role players, these are the people that want combat, these are the people that want to play puzzle games. So I make sure that the puzzle games don't have any of the people that from the get-go in the puzzle room are going, oh my god. You know, it's like, okay, so the sessions are going to have puzzles in it, probably don't have them. I also put the puzzles out there for everyone. Like with Angela, this one was specific for Angela, but in our game, her boyfriend was going a little cuckoo and was drawing sketches, but in a fugue state. And I literally, my original idea was I was going to print out about 100 pages, 150 pages of this art and send it to her in the mail and make her put it together in real life. But I ended up giving it to her digitally so she could assemble it because I knew she's into things like that. And she got to play with Photoshop and I had a lot of fun, but she shared it and everyone got involved. And I really like that type of thing where it's
I got a lot of pictures made in MS Paint that were just like circle. This goes here. Just a lot of
data to figure it out in the session right that moment. You got a chance to play with it, you know?
It took about a week. I got like major focal points of the picture after he at least told me the orientation of the picture. And then we sort of like, well, and then you like softened the idea that we didn't finish the puzzle because the puzzle started solving itself. Like pages started flowing into place, which became ominous.
Yeah, I changed it from the idea that it was going to be something that didn't matter when she finished it to all of a sudden it became a big part of the plot. And I was like, because I told her up front, I said, no, take your time. Don't worry about it, even though she wasn't. She was spending hours on it. But I was like, no, it's got to happen this week. It's got to help finish this week.
So it went from there's no timeline to you might need to get this done in like the next 3 days. I was like, damn it.
So another one though, something I discovered that I really liked was taking away the traditional puzzles and putting in something a little different. I ran the end of one of my arcs in one of my in-game campaigns. They were going after this warlock, and this group of warlocks, 5 wizards and warlocks. They were all trying to figure out how to live forever, and each one found a different way to kind of do it. And this was the second one, and this one had bound the Raven Queen and removed her from existence. She did not exist in my world. This is how I introduced the Raven Queen, because one of my players came to say, they just came out with the Raven Queen and I want it. And I went, how do I get this into my world? Okay, she's always been there, but she was kind of bound. Her essence was bound, and nobody knew about her. They'd forgotten about her. And this guy was able to live forever. However, he could only live together in his temple, in his little box. So he had to live in this box, and he created undead with the power of the Raven Queen. The point was, though, he was completely immortal. So this is this huge room I laid out completely on a map, and this huge dungeon, one single level, about 20, maybe 12 rooms. And then I put puzzles in every room. And these puzzles were not necessarily like we had to go there and solve them because we were in combat. We were taking turns because he was coming after them. And they couldn't hurt him. They could hurt his minions, but they couldn't hurt him. And so, like, one of the puzzles I did was I filled vials with black liquid and then added scented food stuff to them. And I said, you have to find the Raven Queen's blood, and it smells like winter. And so and I said, you can smell one vial a turn. So they had to spend their turn. They could move and smell a vial. And then they had to smell them like, okay, that's lemon. That's probably not it. The very first one they picked was wintergreen. And I'm like, or peppermint. It was peppermint. I'm like, it's kind of, I mean, that's pretty wintry, you know. And they're like, no, we got to smell them all. And that actually took forever. Another one is I put a bunch of washers in a bag and put a couple coins in there that were slightly smaller than the washer. They had 6 seconds to reach in the bag and pull one thing out. If they pulled out a coin, they had to pull out 2 coins, and they solved that puzzle. Another one is my wife, who's the one that wanted the Raven Queen as a patron. Hers was the biggest one. I put a bunch of keys. I had all these different little gold keys. I put them all into a box. I said, you get to reach in and pick one out in 6 seconds. There's like 50 of them in there. One of them is the right one to open a lock on a box you've got. And so she had to sit there and do that over and over and over again. And eventually she got to open it. The mask of the Raven Queen was inside. And I'd actually hand painted a mask 3 times because I'm not good at painting, and hand painted a mask of the Raven Queen over 2 or 3 months and put it inside with a bunch of black raven feathers. And so it was amazing because it's something you can do in game you can't really do elsewhere. But those were very different kind of puzzles than I'm used to. I'm normally thinking like, oh, puzzles, and I threw some traditional ones. They're like word puzzles or like you have to assemble the picture. But I got these ideas online. I was like, these are great ideas for just different kinds of puzzles that aren't necessarily for puzzle people. You know, they're just different. Anyway, I just thought about that. I want to share that. So sorry.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never the closest I've gotten to do like real life props and stuff is I won't show it because back then I didn't make things on my own. I photoshopped other people's stuff. But for personal use, I found a map and I edited it for what I needed, but then I laminated it. And so the party had this wet erase marker that they could mark off because it was there was a bit of a scavenger hunt. So they had to mark off places they'd already checked. But it was a nice way of them to visualize where they were going and what they were doing. It worked out very well. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think the only one that I did back when I used to do IRL was I made a haunted house scenario where I made a diary, which is basically the degradation into madness of people, but it told the story of the place. But I ripped every single page out and hid a different one in a different room. So I would give them the pages unnumbered when they found them.
That's
very
amazing.
Nice.
I also sorry, go ahead.
No, I also had a painting in there, which was actually because, you know, copyright's not a problem in IRL. I think it was like Da Vinci's depiction of the Angel of Death or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I cut that into 4 and hid those 4 bits around the mansion as well. Now, if you assembled the 4 pieces, which I also took the 4 pieces and ripped into 4, so it made like an A4 picture. But I also had a small version of it, which was whole, which when they found all 4 pieces and put together, I gave them the whole one, and the little one fit into a picture I had of a frame above the fireplace, so they could actually put it in the fireplace. And when they did so, it summoned the avatar of death. Now, it turns out the butler was a vampire who'd been avoiding death and had set this whole thing up to avoid death. So if they found the diary first, they would sort of figure out what happened. It was still a riddle, but they could figure out the story of everything and avoid. There was lots of endings. One ending is they could just go, nope. Another ending is the avatar of death appears and the vampire convinces it to attack the party member and take them in his place. And the final ending is that they realize the vampire is a vampire and kill him. Unfortunately, the first time I ran this game, I ran it with my wife. And within the first 5 minutes of meeting the butler, she was just like, vampire! Like, how?
What? Me? I don't know. I'm sorry. You saying the butler did it and then multiple endings? I'm just convinced you played Clue. That's just Yay, Scratticus. Good job. I'm so happy now.
That's great. I love it. There's so many good things, and you know, you don't have to do an IRL. Something I've thought about doing is getting some of those like highlights magazine over here. I don't know what you guys might have over there. I don't know if you have highlights, but they show you 2 different pictures. You got to figure out what's wrong, what's the difference in the pictures. Mm-hmm. You could do that and show a scene. There's a lot of those things online. You show a scene on Roll20, people can actually circle like, oh, there's the difference right there. And you come up with some sort of penalty for when they're wrong. And it reminds me a lot of, and I actually have an entire horror thing planned. It's called the Diary of CJ Author. I've got tons of notes. I've wanted to create an entire journal just like that. I've got about 150 pages planned. Of course, that takes a lot of art and a lot of other things to do to actually succeed. It's never come to fruition. It's about 12 years old. I've got notes somewhere in a folder. But I didn't think I was very good at horror before, and evidently I've gotten better.
Incorrect, sir.
Yeah. Incorrect that I've gotten better?
Incorrect that you're bad at it.
And then when we and that same idea of the penalty of failing on those things is what kind of led to the idea of the indie game that we created based on one of those 200-word RPGs. We have we play. You've heard of Dread, where you play Jenga in a horror setting. If you knock over the Jenga tower, you die. Well, I want to do an online version of that. We play Hangman, and so the name of the monster is the name that you're looking for, and every time you fail to guess a letter, the monster advances his plot, and vice versa. And it's a neat little system.
I love it,
and it's I love that idea of like making other things that aren't necessarily dice rolls the reason for success or failure, and those are all great ways of doing that. I just love that.
Yeah.
So,
We got on a slight tangent, but I enjoyed the
we
tangent.
go all over the place.
We started with prop making. I
this
like
is
this
our
prop
show.
making discussion. This is fun.
Yeah, throwback as well for me.
Yeah,
Speaking,
us too. I haven't done IRL in 2 years.
right? Speaking of board, like based off other games. The game that I made that map for, I actually took the entire premise of it from the card game Werewolf. All of my NPCs were different roles from the werewolf deck. So some people caught on pretty quickly that that's what I was doing. So they had some meta knowledge that they could use. There's a character in the werewolf deck called the Tanner, that if the Tanner gets killed by the village, he wins because that's his goal, is to die. And I had a character that they found very quickly who had already been condemned and executed by the village when they show up, and if they speak with the guy, he's a Tanner and he wanted to die and he lied about being a werewolf so that the village would kill him. So like it was a little herring that if they'd thought about it, like, that's the Tanner, he's not a werewolf. That would also have given them a little bit of extra clue about the game. I was very much amused by it.
Yes. All right, so we only have half an hour, and I want to get to Scratticus' 2 topics because that was like the whole purpose that he wants to be here for.
I'm cool.
I know
I'm cool with that.
but I really am excited to get these topics. So I'm sorry we're going to push this along here. So
go to the next one.
Let's talk about playing it safe. I think a lot of us have a reason why we want to have a safe space, and some of those things can be things we don't want to talk about. That's fine. Do you mind sharing for us do you have a moment that was like, this is why I want to create these spaces, this is why I want to do it this way? Is there something that kind of touched on that, or is it just in general?
Yeah, no, totally. So I mentioned that my IRL campaign didn't hit off so well. And one of the reasons for that was we didn't handle it well. We didn't treat it like a serious thing. We didn't have session zeros or anything like that. Hell, it was the first campaign I ran. We all just rocked up and started doing things. And you know what? People did things that turned out to be hurtful, and people got upset. But that's not really the reason I started wanting to make it a safe space. What really got me going was, I think I empathized with you earlier, Logan, when you said you're about lifting people up and helping people out and that sort of thing. And one of the things that I think is unfortunately very prevalent in this community is the amount of people who come in and say, or don't come in at all because their first session is toxic, or they have a bad first experience, and that bad experience either, I won't name any names, but it either puts them off returning, or it puts them on like a rocky roller coaster way where they end up DMing for their friends with their only experience having been a bad experience, and they sort of want to give everyone a good experience, and it can be incredibly terrifying.
So
go on.
Go ahead.
No, please.
Okay, I was gonna say, as soon as you started talking about that, several names from Twitter popped up in my head as well. I was like, yeah, we probably shouldn't say anything, but there are lots of people that are very vocal about those types of moments and how happy they are that they got past those and found decent people to game with. But 3 years ago, 4 years ago, before Critical Role, before all that, it was impossible to find these places. They didn't exist in as prevalent a way as they do now, and it's the reason why D&D has taken off. It's the reason why, for the first time in D&D history, 4 years later, they're selling more PHPs than they ever have. Usually, it's the first year is their best year, and here we are selling an amazing amount. And not us. I mean, I wish, but they're selling an amazing amount, and I think and a lot of it has to do with the shift in demo. I'm going to blame millennials. They're amazing. They shift in the ideas of how we look at things. We don't turn to cable for entertainment anymore. We turn to the internet. We look for these things. We want to find new entertainments. Building up some group like Critical Role, and the Critical Role people being amazing themselves, showing what it's like to be like that, and then inspiring others. And I know there were people before that. I know there were, but Critical Role is the one that really kind of put that peak up there. Starting even going back right before that and having other shows like Geek and Sundry, where they started, and Tabletop with Will Wheaton. The attitudes of people really showed us what decent people could be like, and it was nice to finally see that in the game industry, because it's not something you see often. But yeah, his names immediately popped up in my head as well, and I was we had a panel at Rose City Comic Con last year. We did inclusivity and diversity in gaming. We had a completely diverse panel, LGBTQ, POC, women across the board. And at one point, one of the people asked, Jesse from Champions of the Earth asked, what was each person's first experience in gaming? And 4 out of the 5 people had the exact same horrible experience. And I was hosting, and I was standing at the back of the room with the microphone. I was just hosting. I didn't want to be up there because, as a cis white male, I didn't belong on that panel. But I could host, and I could help out, and I could allow you focus on them. And after they said that, I was like, well, I think we identified the problem. I mean, it's like it's a game store. It was every game store each time. It was going in. It was toxic. It was horrible.
Still like that. Alice went into a game store just before Christmas to go and buy herself a copy of a book for a season she's going to be running this year. I know that Christmas build-up made it sound like she was building up to a gift, but still, the experience she had was awful. She went in and straight away it was, are you buying for your dad, your brother,
your dad, your husband, your boyfriend?
And she's like, no, actually, I'm buying for me. I'm running a campaign in this
isn't that
season.
Cute?
Not even isn't that cute. Yeah. Just straight up didn't believe her. Laughed at her.
Jesus.
Like, still happens. And that's one of the big reasons.
Sometimes you hear stories and it's like, are we living in a cartoon with, like, mustache twirling and, like, why?
Right?
Like, I managed to avoid all of that. I was one of the few that didn't have a negative experience starting in gaming, partly because my experience started with the man who became my husband. Like, we gamed together, and that was a way of us bonding.
James Bond title?
The man who
became my husband.
The man who would be my husband.
Sounds like the start of a campaign.
Yeah.
Or a wonderful relationship. But I managed, out of sheer virtue of that's not where I started. I didn't venture out into public spaces. That wasn't what I did. I was in a dorm room with a bunch of fucking nerds, and we all just... Yeah, so I lucked out tremendously, but I keep hearing stories, and I'm just, like, so righteously angry for people.
I am very sorry to say that, unfortunately, my game store was one of those types of game stores. Not me. I was very good at customer service. I don't think I treated anybody differently depending on what they were buying, but my store overall, and I wish I could blame the fact that I bought it off of another person. The store was already established, and maybe that was part of it, but I did not understand how to foster the correct environment at the time. This was back 2007, 2008. And I owned it for about 2.5 years, and I'm very glad that I still own it. But I'm very sad to say my game store was no different. And I'm very happy to say that my competitor that I talked about earlier, Gary Ray at Black Diamond Games, he does it right. His manager is a woman. They are incredible at what they do, and they are seeing the success, and they deserve it. Also, engineer, great businessman. Go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's really the reason why I wanted to start making it safe, essentially.
All right.
We could start, if you want, we could...
How do we
Yeah.
do that?
Great. Brilliant. Great first question. So we're all about to sit down and play a game. Do we just dive straight in and start playing?
Yes.
No. That leads to
Oh.
problems.
Got
That
it.
leads to problems. Do floor dice count? Who knows? We didn't
Well,
discuss
no,
it.
Never.
But
hate
you
floor
didn't
dice.
discuss it. So this person's brand new. They've never played a game before.
Oh,
They
okay.
roll. It hits the floor. It's a nat 20. They're really excited. And then you either take that away from them, or you swallow that cardinal rule, and it tastes so sour all the way down. So you start with a session 0, right?
But player tiers feed me, so I take it away from them, right? Isn't that that's how it works? It sustains me. That's how every time I can taste a player's tears, that's 1 hour of sleep I don't need.
And we see how well that's going.
Is that the
Really
secret?
good this morning, evidently.
I just thought I was a fey creature. Anywho, but also a lot of people who come in have had a traumatic first experience, also, it's not just. I mean, we always talk about POCs, and diverse individuals who have bad experiences, but also sometimes the toxicity that comes from people who are or are not in that white group can come from other experiences outside of TTRPGs. For example, if you are an ex-war vet and you're coming into a game which is essentially about warfare, it can be very easy to become toxic because maybe you're handling emotions that you've not done before. So the first thing I do with any group is we build a lines and veils sheet. Let's go through for chat just in case. Lines and
Yes.
veils. Lines are something that will not appear in the game. That is a hard line. For me, on my channel, sexual assault, rape, abuse, not abuse, but sexual abuse, that is a hard line. We will never touch on it on our show, and we make that very clear from the off. We also have a veil, which is sexual interaction, because I'm going to kind of break that rule. Not really. I'm going to use awkward in a humorous way here, so brace yourselves. Essentially, two characters that have a sexual interaction. They can have a ton of fun. It's essential to procreation. It's generally considered a good thing, but if we sit and talk about sex on stream, it's going to get very awkward.
The smooches turn to scooches and it just gets real uncomfortable.
Suddenly it goes from good to weird. Yeah? Hence why it's
like
a
that
veil.
joke.
Hence
Yeah, that plays.
we fade to black, we go to the next scene. It did happen, but we're just going to leave it over there,
It's veiled. It's behind a curtain. It's just over there.
Exactly.
It did happen. We can talk about it. Absolutely.
It is going
We tend to
Why
pan
would-
to the fireplace. We just say there was a fireplace in the room and we pan to it.
Yeah.
And that's great. And sitting there and talking to the people at your table about that, also letting them know that if they're not comfortable telling people openly about it, although you'd hope they would, that they can come to you personally, especially if they don't know the other players. They can come to you personally and you can add it to the list without pointing out who it was specifically. That is a huge thing. I always tell my players that if you're not comfortable talking to anyone, you can come to me. If you're not comfortable talking to me, you can talk to either of my DM assistants. And so there are 3 people that you can find someone to be comfortable with and talk to. And if you're still not comfortable, go to another player and they can come to me and keep you anonymous. I will still make it happen.
There's another thing as well. Google Docs. Google Docs is a great place to keep your lines and veils because you can update that sheet anonymously. I leave them as working documents. They are always live. Every session before I go live, I go and check my lines and veils document. And remind people that they can update it anonymously even up to 5 minutes before the game starts. And you can see it.
Fair.
I like that a lot.
That way, because obviously what you're addressing there is the awkwardness of addressing someone with your line and veil, and that just sort of takes the person out of it.
And trying to have to explain why, that you are afraid of earthworms or whatever. You don't need to explain it. You're afraid of earthworms. My first wife was afraid of a particular insect, and I'm trying not to out too much, but it's because they were traumatized by it, and we didn't talk a lot about it. We had in one game the strangest thing ever. I mean, it's not strange at all, but we had somebody that was deathly afraid of spiders, and to the point where we couldn't even talk about them or describe them. And I'm like, that's a big deal. There are a lot of spiders in the game, so I can't remove spiders altogether. So we worked out a compromise. We called them llamas, And we just said they're llamas every time they come in the room, and we made it a goofy thing that there's these 8-legged llamas, these furry llamas, to the point where we had players' daughters riding them around because they had a birth of giant llama spider things. But we always called them llamas, and it was goofy and silly enough that they could disconnect away from their veil, and it was not a hard line. But it was a way that we could kind of compromise and make that happen, because it wasn't something that came up until we were in the middle of the game. And that's the other thing. People are allowed to change their lines and veils. We had
even live.
Yes, even live, absolutely, especially live.
Especially
we had one person
live.
come to me after a game. We did something very new in this game, and Heather does. I know that Heather doesn't mind me telling this story. Heather is a vet tech, and she's an amazing person. In this game, we've done something. Angela's wife Andy came up with this idea. Said, "I want to play an awakened dog." We awakened an animal in the previous game, and it was amazing. It was basically Doug from Up, and he said, "I want to play an awakened dog who's a wizard." And this is before Dean Doggos came out. He was just like,
it was like almost at the exact same time they concurrently came up with this idea.
and I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. I absolutely have no problems with this. He told me about the idea in one of our prequels, and I was like, oh, you realize you're going to be the favorite character, and I'm never going to be able to hurt you because you're amazing. And also, I'm one of my veils is animal abuse, and that's okay with me because it's adorable, and he doesn't play as often as everyone else anyway. But he was in game, and he's a person, so he gets up and sits at the table, and his sister, who runs a bar, brings over a bowl of ale, and he's eating chocolate. And this vet tech comes after one of the games and goes, "I didn't realize I had this veil, but I have a really hard time with this because much like in our mainstream." People always make fun of cats playing with yarn, but yarn is extremely bad for cats. It can be very harmful for them. Anything stringy, and I know that for a fact. $4,000 vet bill. It is not good to have stringy things in cats because they will eat it, and it gets wrapped around their tongue, goes in their intestines, and all of a sudden you're sitting at 2 major surgery over major parts of their body. So the idea that it's cute that this cat is playing with a ball of yarn, it's not cute, but it is very mainstream. People think giving yarn is okay. So she asked if we could not perpetuate that, and so she created a list of things that are not okay for dogs, which Andy now uses not only in game but also
with our dog.
yeah, and that's another great use of a veil as well. Not only personal discomfort, but also perpetuating the right image, which is a massive thing in the modern industry. But also, the other thing about it is it can literally be the way I work. So the other thing is the safety system that we use live, which we'll go into in a moment. I know Angela mentioned that we'd like to go through that. The other thing is my wording is always very careful. I don't want to put it on people that you can only have a veil if it's an emotional thing for you. Whatever the hell it is, if it's a veil, if it's a line, if it's going to negatively impact your enjoyment of the game, which is my carefully worded thing, if it's going to make you feel salty, if you're going to think you're not going to have much fun with it or anything like that, well, hell, usually we've only got 3 hours to play. Let's not waste time doing things you're not going to enjoy. You know, like.
Yeah, very fair.
Yeah.
Now, have you run into an issue of running into a player that has maybe what might be borderline too many things,
Never.
too many lines and veils?
No.
So
I think there's always a way. There's always a way around. Everyone has a table. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I have run into people who don't fit the GM. Let's say, for example, the GM style, they like to use things as plot devices. Anything that people attach themselves to will become a plot device, right? I could be describing any DM here, I'm sure. But, for example, we encounter a child. Great, the child's now a plot device. You know, we can do things to the child to make people react, which is a very powerful one. People latch onto children, and if anything happens to that child, they'd die for them. That becomes a line. Okay, that's fine. We can just remove that from the game. Something else comes in. That's a line. Okay, we remove that from the game. Something else comes in. That's a line. We need to remove that from the game. But you get to a point where you realize it's not actually that they've got too many lines. It's that they're at the wrong table. Which is where we come to the group making thing that we were going to talk about as well. This segues nicely, so I'm just going to section straight into that.
Go for it. We can skip around. Go for it.
whenever I'm putting a group together for a campaign or anything like that, I will never put someone into a campaign that is brand new. I will always do 2 or 3 one-shots with people just to get an idea of the sort of game they like to play, the sort of topics they like to touch on, and that sort of thing. I also play with the DMs, and I will deliberately match people up.
Okay.
That's a nice system.
That's a great system. So you're saying you do one-on-one games with these people?
No. I invite them to our one-shots. So we currently run 5
Before
open
we go
sessions
to
a week.
Campaign. Bye, Angela. Hi, Angela. Sorry.
It's fine.
Yeah, before we go into it, before I invite anyone to a campaign, I will give them a couple of sessions to shake off that first impression, because first game ever. I can remember my first game ever online. I came with a voice. I couldn't even do the voice. I was so nervous.
Aww.
You know, I was shaking like a leaf. I was sitting there in my chair thinking, God, I hope I do a good job. Turns out that they did enjoy what I did. I was invited back to come and be on seasons and stuff like that, and it was good. But I was so nervous, and I just remember thinking, wow, that first session is not a good representation of who I am as a role player. For me, it only took... On my next session, I was able to do a voice, and the progression was steep. But everyone's different, okay? Some people could take up to 10 sessions to wear down that initial hype that some people come up with. Some people come in with too much energy. They're too excited, and they just want to do everything. You know, they're taking hold of every single plot, no matter who it's for, and they just want to do everything. They just want to do all the things. They're like a dog chasing a car. Other people, oh God, we're live. There's people. More common, possibly. And you have to kind of coax them out of their shell. And I always say to people who do one show and then say, hey, can anyone give me feedback? I'd like to improve. I always tell them not to ask for feedback. Your first show, it's all about you. It's about you getting comfortable. Once you've got 3 shows under your belt, then you can start looking for feedback, in my opinion, on how to improve your roleplay. You know? But after them 3 sessions, they've worn off their initial excitement and everything. You can start looking at how they play, the things that go into them. You'll have an idea of their lines and veils by this point because you've encountered them several times. You'll know DMs that have similar lines and veils, or at least similar play styles, and you can start matching them up. Not only matching them up to DMs, but also to games that fit. You know, D&D is for everyone. It's available to everyone, but might not be the best game for everyone.
I always go with there's a game out there for everyone. Exactly. It might not be this game, but there's
a table out there. Yeah, that I agree with you, and that is a hard. Your comment before about this may not be the table for you. That for us, the way we game now is easy to say. When you only have your group of 4 friends, and that's the only people you know that play D&D, and the only other group you have is this more toxic game store or whatever. That is a very difficult thing, because for somebody, especially like me, I believe that role-playing saved my life. In high school, I went to very dark places. If I had not discovered that group of people, and not from the people itself, but role-playing, something to latch onto, something to believe in, something that I found enjoyable in a time when I found nothing enjoyable, that giving that up, no matter who I was playing with, was not an option. Walking away from that table was not an option. I was not going to happen. So instead, I turned around and started DMing, and that helped. It is for some people that it's tough. It's not an option to be able to walk away. They need this. It is their outlet.
And the same thing for me. It's kind of self-reflection. The group that I ran, the D&D group that I ran with my poster and everything, and we did eventually get a group together and we ran. That wasn't the group for my style of DMing. We were constantly headbutting each other. But it was the only thing I had. And it wasn't until later on when I started streaming and stuff, and I realized that, hang on, we've got an internet out there. You know, we're essentially sitting around a table right now. We're just in different parts of the world. We have choice. That's the internet's very enabling in that sense. But I remember I had an experience actually where I when I was very new to DMing, I was doing a chat show where I was doing a world build for a world I'm still yet to play a campaign in, but I will do one day.
Mood.
I mentioned this. I mentioned that my home group wasn't the group for me, that we didn't all have a good time. People were getting distracted. We were headbutting all the time. And I got a really toxic comment come up in my chat that was just like, if your players didn't have a good time, that means you're a bad DM.
Dead.
And yeah, I did. That was exactly what I did. I died a little bit, and that's when that was another thing that helped me. We're going to flick back to how do we make a safe space now. That's another thing that made me decide my chat is heavily moderated from now on. I don't want anyone to feel like I did in that moment when they come in for that first game. Like, even my wording again is careful. No criticism or feedback that is unsolicited. So if people start coming in and saying, "Oh, this is the worst," and people do this, I don't know if they're trolling, whether they're doing it on purpose or whether it's an accident, but people will go, "This person's great. That person's doing this really well. That person's doing that really well. And that person's doing that really well." But they don't mention this person at all. Immediately, I remove it from my chat. No.
Wow.
I don't want anyone to feel left out.
That's,
you know?
See, that would throw me, because I wouldn't have caught that because I don't have to pay attention, but Fennec, our moderator, might catch something like that. Because to me, it's like, oh, 5 positive comments, not realizing that there really should be a 6th or maybe a 7th. I'm here too, but whatever. You know, and yeah, that's a really good comment. We had somebody last night that, and we're still learning about where we want to draw that line. Last night on our game, we had one of our characters was in a moment and did a critical hit, and the critical hit. The best part about critical hit is the damage, because it's always amazing. And in my game, I hate when you roll critical damage or you roll less than you could have rolled normally. So we always max the critical dice. It's just maxed. That always starts with a baseline of being at least 1 above what you would normally be able to max your dice. And so she added it up, and I'm going, wait, what did you get on the dice? Because it sounds like you didn't do enough damage. Because she wrote, like, I did like 68 damage. I'm like, I think you did 80 something. Because she turned herself into a T-Rex, and it's 4d12. So I'm like, and she's like, oh, I did this and this. I'm like, I'm trying to get her to explain to. I'm like, I just didn't want to know what the total of the dice was so I can do this for you real quick. Somebody said, wow, this is really difficult to watch. You know, why is the DM questioning 68 damages is plenty or something like that? I'm like, I only saw briefly about it. I was like, fuck you. I'm like, you don't like it, walk away. You know, why be like that? And I know that our moderator wasn't there last night, and I just go, maybe we should have banned that guy. Maybe we should have been like, you know what? We don't need your kind of negativity. You don't like it, please just leave. Don't stick around. You don't need to be here. We don't need you.
Not even please leave. We want you if you want to be here. See you later.
You know, but if you don't want to walk the door, if you have to make some comment before you leave, we'll show you the door. It's kind of where I was at. Yeah. It was a very rude comment. I was like, I was very frustrating. And that's the type of thing. Or like the people come in and go, oh, this person's hot. Stop. Just we ban them right away. No.
Straight. Well, actually, I like to address those people actually with at least one comment and a chance. My players are not objects. I took that from a woman who responded on her own channel. Someone came in and was like, "Damn girl, whatever," you know, and she was just like, "Hey, hold up, I'm not an object, and you're a mouse." Was it
Madame Gandalf?
No, it wasn't, but it could very easily. I
saw her do that the other day. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, filed, logged, using it. Whenever someone comes in like that, they get one chance. I state my rules.
Our moderators may be a little better at it than I am, and they may actually just time them out and be like, hey, that's not okay. Don't make comments like that. I don't know how, you know, but I was just like, when I was moderating, I was just like, get rid of them. Because I have to be a little more strict because I'm trying to do a million things. You know what that's...
Oh, yeah, definitely. We've got a comment in chat there from Secondhand Samurai. Don't you have trouble with Twitch blocking text walls? Getting to say something about everyone would hit that limit. So don't. That's why my channel's rule is no feedback or unnecessary criticism. If you want to pay someone a compliment, great job, everyone. You don't need to go into the specifics of what people are doing well, because as soon as you go into the specifics of what people are doing well, other people think, oh, so I'm not doing that so well. Like, even if you do include everyone and you say a good thing about everyone, if you say about one person, your voice is amazing, every other person at that table is going to think, my voice isn't as good as that guy's. Or girls, or whatever. Is guys androgynous yet? I feel like guys should be an androgynous term.
Guys, dude. Yeah, it's, but it may not be to everyone. That's okay. So that's why we clarify that we're trying to be. But I agree with that. I'm actually, now I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking that may be a good rule for players in general to amongst themselves, because we have one person who has a radio voice and is an amazing singer. But I'm like, all of my players, every one of my players is an amazing singer, but even if they're not, that doesn't devalue them. And when we talk about this one person, get excited about this one person's voice or one particular voice they can do, it kind of makes it makes me go, well, yeah, all right. I mean, he's great, but I do a lot of voices, and maybe that's something that should be just a rule across the board. That's interesting to think about.
I think there's a time and a place,
I have broken that rule on your channel, and I just realized that. It's funny because I go in and I talk about one or two people in particular not thinking about that. And I've even read the rules and I just clicked OK, but you think you're just giving a compliment, but you're not. I got excited when Angela was there, and I think I just shouted out to Angela. I don't think I actually said anything, but most of the time my compliments are very like, hey, you're all amazing. You're all great. You deserve everything that's going on. Yeah. And then I throw a bunch of random chats at you or random subscriptions at you because I love your channel. But
totally wasn't calling you out there.
No. I didn't think you were
self-reflection is always,
I didn't even know,
to be clear.
I didn't even know if you had that in mind that I had done that, but
no.
But I just realized, and it's something I've been working on very hard to become more self-aware as a cis white male with a lot of privilege. You walk into these situations, and you think, oh, I'm doing a good thing. I'm giving compliments, not trying to just be like, I'm gonna do. Here's my karma for the day. I'm gonna compliment all the player, But you just don't realize that what you're doing sometimes. You don't realize how it looks to other people, even though you're trying to do a good deed. It come across really negative, and that's
exactly.
And that's why that could be the story of my memoir.
And that's why I open with, I don't know if people are trolling or whether it's just they don't realize, because more often than not, people come in with good intentions. It's that old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But yeah, I promised that I would say about the safety system that we go with when we start.
Yes, please. So, let's go ahead. I think we're going to have to wrap up with that unless you have a lot more time, but I think you've got a show here soon. So
yeah, I've got a show now. I did say a hard stop of 12. Let's say 20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
That gives me 10 minutes to eat. That's plenty. So, when we're coming into the game, we've already discussed lines and veils. We've already discussed the rules. We've all got our characters ready before we get in. We come into the Zoom chat before the game, and we are ready to play. Hi, everyone. On our channel, we use a safety system. This means that you can actively create a line or a veil during live play without chat knowing about it. Essentially, I open with, there are 3 symbols. It's like a traffic light symbol. If you've been to a convention recently, they are starting to use these systems, and it's a good thing. That is good progress for our community as a whole. To be very clear, I did not develop these systems. I have modified it somewhat for streaming. But that was through a lot of help from a lot of key figures in the community, including Kiana S, including Misty Vanda, including I can't remember her full Twitter handle, but her name's Elle, and she's very big on safety systems. Off the Table, also very big on safety systems. I pulled a lot of help to try and make my safety system as good as possible, because when we're all behind a screen, unfortunately, it's very hard to deep listen to each other and those other things that you can do naturally. So essentially, we've got the Zoom chat open. I'm going to use Twitch chat here. I'm like, okay, the first symbol is an X, which you can do in chat like that. You can do an X with your fingers or across your chest like that. The X means the content that we have just touched on is negatively impacting my enjoyment of the game. Very careful wording, like I mentioned before, and I will explain that. And then I explain exactly what we do if an X happens. If an X happens, we stop the scene. We fade to black immediately. We figure out what it is that's caused the X. We remove it from the game. Even if we have to go back half an hour and we don't lose all the content between, but we change that one thing which causes this thing to happen, it doesn't matter. I'll go back 2 years if I have to redact something that causes an X for someone. We remove it from the game and we never talk about it again. And that is the X. Next is the N. We use ASL, which looks like that. But the N goes in chat there. The N is your amber light. The N is the veil, essentially. The N is this is getting too much. It's going to become an X, and or okay, this is going to happen, but I don't want details. This is where the sexual interaction comes in. We fade to black. We explain what happens. We fade to black. We go to the next scene where we deal whatever it is that's happening. It doesn't have to be sexual interaction. That's something that I use flippantly because it's funny to talk about sex sometimes. And it kind of breaks the ice a little bit, which is also a big thing with a new group. But also it could be very serious things. We could be seeing an old person die, and that could be an experience that someone's had recently. You know, it's a common experience. I think we've all experienced it at some point. It could be something. It could be anything, you know. But the N essentially is that, yeah, okay, this is going to happen. I just don't want to know all the details about it. Let's go on to the next scene where we're all trying to lift each other up, because actually, I could use that. You know, you don't want to redact because then you don't get the benefit of the development afterwards. But at the same time, you don't want to go into the detail. Lastly is the O card. The O card is the funny card. Not white power, okay? I don't care what people say. This means okay. It is official sign language. Them damn racists can fuck off. Sorry, shouldn't swear on your channel, but
No,
I get
It's okay.
Swear all you
It's
want.
allowed.
Thank you.
We're definitely. You have to click that button to come into our channel. So
Yeah. O means okay. O means my feelings are disproportionate to the feelings that I am currently emitting. So you might be crying, you might be angry, you might look frustrated or annoyed, you could look scared if we're doing a horror game and you're flinching. But we are a group of storytellers. Some of us are actors. Others of us enjoy getting the emotional satisfaction of these scenes, especially like when it comes to like season finales and stuff. We get a lot of O's in season finales because there comes to be a lot of tears. Not only are these characters coming to some climatic ending of a story, we're also very aware that this group might not come back next season. So there's often a lot of tears. And the O is, this is okay. Keep doing what you're doing. I like it. Also known as the hit me harder daddy button.
We're not calling it that. We're not calling it that. And Logan, we're not. We're not doing it. Angie might start calling it that, but you're not allowed to.
now, she knows what I'll do with things like that. Like I have the down below instead of the doobly doo, and yeah, she doesn't like that. So I like that one because we often have those moments in game where and Tess and I did this one time. We went to a game, there was no session 0 with this DM. I joined the game after. Our characters did not like each other, and we started sniping at each other like crazy and turned into a big argument. And everybody went, "Are you guys okay?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, no, we're fine." But we realized there's no session 0. Her and I can do this all day long. We can be completely angry at each other to the point where you think we're going to get a divorce in game, and we can just drop it in a hat and just be like, "No, that's not us. We are in our characters." And when you're at a table, especially people that aren't at that, and I hate to use this word, level, that don't have that experience to be able to get into their character that much, or don't want to, and that's acceptable too. It's can be a little scary. Absolutely, I'm with you 100% there. Now, the one thing we do on top of all that, because like I said, if my players aren't crying once a week, I'm not doing my job. We do aftercare. After every session, I'm available for 20 minutes to sit there and take care of them and be like, "What do you need? I'm here." Sometimes I need it too, but I'm like, I'm here to answer questions. And if somebody has a serious issue with the game, now's the time to tell me. We don't use an active game system in game, although I'm open to discussing it. The problem is the first time that people started to try to introduce that X into the game, they started using it.
It's the hardest thing.
Jokingly.
Yes, I don't tolerate jokes. I have to be very serious with it.
It was some joke was made, and they were like, "No, we do not want." And everyone started crossing their arms. And I'm like, afterwards, I said, first off, we have no social contract and no actual contract that we would use that system. Second, that's a bad use of that system to try to tell me that you don't like this joke when obviously you're laughing and it's not. You really don't have anything to do with it. You're just trying to be funny. Those are not okay. And I told the group that we've never touched it since, and I haven't touched it because of that. I was worried about that continuing to happen. But I do want to take it seriously and talk about that, and specifically that system. And I know we've talked about these systems before, and there's different ones, the flower, there's the bloom. There's 100 of these different systems now.
This is a modification of the flower system, for example.
There is a positive one. And there's always, because I always feel when I hit an X in game, I feel like I failed. And I know that I shouldn't. That
is the hardest thing about any system. The hardest thing about all of these systems is that the onus to make the flag is on the person that is going through the bad things, and you can feel fake peer pressure to not want to ruin it for everyone else. And that is one of the hardest things. That's one of the things I work hardest on, is trying to modify my system to reduce that. That being said, I did forget one of the symbols. The last one is the check-in, by the way. O question mark. only happens in chat. There's no symbol for it. The O question mark is you see someone displaying negative emotions, and you want to check they're okay. Also, if we come across something like you said, one of your players was playing a dog, and also that your veil is animal abuse. If we come across some content in game, like someone attacks that dog, and you sit there and think, well, that could be animal abuse, I'm not sure. They didn't flag it. Is everyone okay? Again, you play the O card, you know?
And I check those things after, and that's a great way to check live. I should get more to that. We, inside of Zoom, there's a way to do a hand raise. And I use this for when people are feeling like they aren't being heard, they're being talked over. We have a lot of very big personalities in our game. But if you click the hand raise, a little blue hand appears for me only. Nobody else can see it. And so I know that, hey, I'm not getting attention and I really need it. I really want it. I wanted to say something in this scene, and I didn't.
I need to know where that system function is. I have no idea about it.
It is
show me live.
Manage participants. No, it's not under that. Where is it? It is. I don't remember. And everyone else knows these things, and I don't know where they are. It's under your drop down. It's under your drop down. It's just called raise hand, I believe. Where is it?
I use it's the participants for me when you go into the participants. Not manage, just the participants.
I'm the manager, so I don't know where it is. So, Angela?
Gotcha. But as a user, if you click participants, you have a raise hand button and it will pop up. And I don't know if that's here. I'll try it. Do you see that, Scratticus?
I see that as well, yeah.
Okay, so that's
okay, so here's the difference. Do you see that in Zoom? Well, you see it in Zoom. You shouldn't see it in Zoom. I thought we had that set up so no one else would see it.
I don't know. That might be a setup.
The audience doesn't see it, is what it is. So I thought that you didn't see it as well. You saw that on her screen?
In the participant window.
Can you do it again? I saw it in the participant window.
Yes, you can see it in the participant window, but that's not usually open for most people. So do you see it right now on her screen?
I don't see it on her screen, no.
Yeah, so that was it. So as long as nobody has a participant window, which who has that open? I mean, usually except
no one's going to have it open unless they're doing that, unless they're raising their hand. So
for me, I see a little blue hand appear in the top corner, but also the audience doesn't see it because that's cropped out of our frames. So the only person that sees it is me, and so that allows them to anonymously, without disrupting, say, I'd like a little attention because I'm getting talked over, or I feel like I'm not being heard, and I can stop things and carefully, hopefully, be like, oh, hey,
bring them into the fold, yeah.
You know, Angela, what did you want to say?
This is another important thing. A card gets played, not an O card, not an okay, you're doing great. A card gets played, which is an N or an O. It might be your first time doing this as a DM, or it could be the 100th time. It's scary as hell. You suddenly go through a range of emotions. You feel like you failed the person. You have to modify your story on the fly, so there's also pressure on you to perform. It's a scary time.
I put for that. I'm sorry,
but also it's an important time, and I think part of that pressure is that people know it's going to put that on you, so that puts them off using it. So I've been working with the system to try and do all sorts of things to try and make it easier to do a softer. So like one thing I did was a plus and minus, because what I found was the XNO system is very good at addressing individual topics. But if there's just a build-up of negative things that just makes you start being depressed about playing the character and you can't even say why, you can sort of track it by playing pluses and minuses. That's another thing I've brought in. Just putting in chat pluses and minuses. Whenever you have a scene that you feel developed your character in a positive way, you put a plus down. Whenever you encounter something, whenever you find something that just brings your character down a little bit, you just play a minus. And it's still scary, but it's less scary because it's soft. You just realize there's no action tied to it. It's just like a little log just for the DM of, okay, that person's had a negative experience. Okay, that person's had a negative experience. Because what it can seem like sometimes is that you're picking on someone because of their backstory or whatever. They've come in with this 24-page emotional backstory, and you're using it as you're using it heavily because you want to hurt them. That's clearly what they want. That's why they give this backstory, right? But it turns out that actually thing after thing after thing after thing after thing, they just feel like they're getting picked on and they're not having a good time anymore. You know?
True. Yeah.
It's difficult to fit that thing into a safety system.
I've been there in this campaign, absolutely. It's hard to balance that system. Angela, has an amazing system that she found.
At least, yeah, I found one.
Sort of thing. It's called Knives. Is that it?
Knife Theory. It's called Knife Theory.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah.
So I've been meaning to implement it in my next campaign. My next campaign is very likely going to be a place where these safety systems will be used, but will likely not be necessary at all. I'm tentatively calling it work in progress. It's called Gentle D&D. It will be the softest of soft games. I'm very excited, but I'm going to probably implement all this stuff regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tools are amazing, and not every tool works at every table. You got to find out what works for you. For me, I'm still very hesitant to put those types of safety things into the game directly because part of what my games are hurting people, and I've found that this is a genre a way of evoking emotions that I'm very good at, but I also deal with those things after the fact. Dealing with them in the moment would be very difficult for me, especially remembering, because I don't have a great memory. Mm-hmm. Remembering these things, I can remember my game, I remember the things going on, I get into the emotion of the people, but remembering those things individually, I like to have a conversation away from the table, because if I can sit and talk about it, it's a lot easier. But
that's an important thing to specify, actually. That's an important thing to specify, is that you don't have to have the conversation then. Because someone plays a card, you don't have to have the conversation then. I also say, after I've talked about the safety system, we've gone through questions, I make sure that people have got enough water, and I tell them that they can take a break at any time. And one of the examples I give of a good break is a card's just been played and your head's not right. Feel free to take 5 minutes to just step away.
Yes, absolutely. We have screens that people can put up. I say you can walk away anytime you want. Exactly. Originally, when we started this, we're like, oh, you have to have your camera on the whole time. I'm like, that's not going to work for a lot of people. Some people get to the point, especially in these games, where even if they're okay, they're ugly crying, and they're just like, I do not want to be seen like this. And so they just turn off their camera for a little bit, and that's okay. We move on. We hope they're still listening. But we do need to.
That is a situation in which the O system would be very useful. Someone steps away, make sure you put, I'm okay, I just need a minute. Yeah. Like that, because sometimes when someone bounces away, you have 5 other people on screen going, are they okay? Do we just keep going? Like, what's going on?
Exactly.
So having that little bit of, having that confirmation.
Distracting for anyone.
And I hate to break it to you guys, but unfortunately it's not foolproof. You'll still get that.
Oh, yeah.
There'll be people who don't use it, but it certainly helps, and it makes people feel safe. That's the important thing. Because we had last season on the jury, I'm sure they won't mind me talking about this, but on the jury last season, we had a situation where we touched very close onto something very real for someone. They've told me several times that they had a truly deep emotional experience, and they were someone who came in laughing like, people are asking if I'm okay. Like, we're playing a game, of course I'm okay, you know, what's the worst that can happen? They ended up having a really deeply emotional moment in the game, and they only felt safe enough to share that with us and roleplay through it because they had the safety system in place. So it's not just a tool that's a safety net that stops people from getting hurt. It's also an enabler in that it gives people the courage that you are going to look after them. Same as being a heavy moderator in chat and everything. Any player who comes into my channel, I want them to know that they are my #1 priority and I would die for them. You know, like, it's an enabler as well.
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that, and I'm going to touch a little bit on my history. My games when I was in high school were not pleasant. There were things that happened in these games that were not necessarily pleasant because I was going through a lot. I was working through a lot, and it was because of those games I feel that I was able to come out somewhat okay on the other side. And it took years of very dedicated friends that were willing to work with me and deal with all my bullcrap to kind of bring me out of that. Not everyone has that. I'm very thankful for them. But role playing can be used. It is therapy. It is. You can work through things that you couldn't work through in your real life with these games. But it takes a very good DM, a very patient DM, and you being willing to kind of be a part of that, and you can do that, and it's fun. As strange as that sounds, it's kind of fun to go through these things and experience them as not you, and be like, this is how I wanted to handle it, or this is how. And you may not be making those conscious decisions, but in general, I believe that role-playing is a very good therapy tool. Not necessarily all the time, but just in general, it can be. And I hope that we'll have some guests soon that can talk more about that. because it is amazing what role playing can do for people, and this amount of stories I've seen out there of people who believe that role playing has helped them through their lives is just it's countless.
I am the proud owner of 3 messages so far. People telling me, "Thank you for your show. I was suicidal and now I'm not." That's why I keep doing it. There's a lot of reasons why I made it a safe system. Those are amazing. And to think 6 months ago, I was watching a documentary with Matt Mercer and he was talking about that. And I was like, wow, as if that had ever happened to someone like me. You know, like, it's a real good feeling.
I think that's a great place to end. We're 20 minutes after. You've got a game in 40 minutes. That is twitch.tv/Scratticus Academy? No, just Scratticus, right?
Just Scratticus.
Thank you.
Just Scratticus.
Thank you so much for being here, Scrat. We hope that you will come back very, very soon.
Heck
you are
yeah.
always welcome here. I will be glad to get up at 5:30 in the morning to do a show with you early. And do this many times, and I'm hoping to come on one of your shows very soon, one of your one shots.
Yeah, we should talk about that. We should get you in the diary.
Of course, but I definitely want to come over and say hi, and then maybe we can work on a project together in the future at some point. That would be amazing.
Hell yeah, sounds great.
Scrat, and also thank you for for letting me hop onto your Ryutama game. I think it was.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome.
It was very, very fun, and Jason and I ended up meeting up after that, and I'm going to be guesting on his and Susanna's Witcher game. So I got to hang out with them. So that's super duper awesome. So thank you for inviting me.
That's another best thing to hear. Okay, those 3 messages are the best thing to hear. But the other thing that I hear a lot of is people telling me that thanks to being on the show, they now have a regular group. Booyah! You know, like.
Yeah, it's amazing to help connect people with people. That's all I've ever wanted to do. I cannot be everyone's best friend. I cannot be everyone's DM, but I would love to do that and help people grow the community and just in general. Anyway, that is us, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I don't think we have any other wrap up.
The only other thing is I think we're going to rerun this during our normal time, so noon PST, and Logan and I are going to be attempting to do a second dice giveaway during the chat during the rerun. So,
we'll see how it works out. I don't know how it's going to work.
We'll give it a try.
If not, we will do it next week. And hopefully we'll have Scratticus back on very soon, and we'll have other guests coming. But other than that, thank you guys so much for being here. We just really appreciate all of you. You can check out Scratticus every single day, every minute of every day. He's almost always streaming. And we, Angela and I, are on Countless Heroes.
Tonight, I'll be on tonight.
Tuesday through, I'm on every night. Tuesday through Friday, 7 p.m. PST, and then Saturdays at noon, 1 o'clock PST. We're also going to be adding probably a Wednesday one-shot game coming up soon, where I'm going to do 1 to 2 hours, probably competing with Scratticus for some time because he streams all the time. And then we're going to be probably unlocking Tuesday or Thursday here very soon to add a bunch of new shows. We've got people applying for the network, so we got a lot going on. Also, because we talked about it a lot last week of how grumbly Logan's time was. The website is finally finished on nerdsmith.org, so you can go there. You can support us through nerdsmith.org/donate, or you can see all the other amazing content. 19 different shows, 49 creators, creating nerdy entertainment that is absolutely free to everyone. And almost every one of them is a very, very safe space. So thank you guys very much, and have a wonderful day.
Please be good to each other.
Bye-bye.
Take care.